Warrior Lore. Chapter 1299. Fong Yuan's gaze flickered with uncertainty. Shadow Sect's news was out of his expectations. But thinking about it, it was very reasonable. After the Battle of Reverse Flow River, even though Fong Yuan did not gain much in terms of cultivation resources, his battle strength grew greatly. He became the number 1 person below rank 8, on par with Feng Jiuge. The increase in battle strength led to an increase in status. Actually, before this news, there were other letters. For example, Chu Du's letter. In the letter, Chu Du was very polite. He first congratulated Fong Yuan on his victory and wished he could be there. Next, he took the initiative to describe his situation. The Chu sect had been renamed to the Chu family, and the original Grand Elders were now acting as the Chu family's external Grand Elders. Chu Du's disciples were all adopted as his sons. Finally, Chu Du described his difficulties. Because he established his clan and became part of the righteous path, he had no choice but to expel Fong Yuan from Chu sect. This was not his own will. He was forced by the situation. There was also a letter from the 3 crazed demon eccentrics. In the letter, other than congratulating Fong Yuan, the 3 eccentrics also invited Fong Yuan to explore Crazed Demon Cave. They also said, even if Northern Plains did not accept Fong Yuan, Crazed Demon Cave would forever be Fong Yuan's home. These words were slightly mushy. They displayed the unprecedented attitude of the 3 crazed demon eccentrics. Longevity Heaven placed emphasis on Fong Yuan. After all, Fong Yuan was the culprit who killed Ma Hongyun. However, Lu tribe and Yi Lui tribe, who had wanted to capture Fong Yuan and wanted to capture him, had instead given up. Fong Yuan's battle strength completely shocked them. They recalled all the people who were searching for Fong Yuan. Instead, they were worried that Fong Yuan would take revenge on them. After all, Fong Yuan was already famous in Northern Plains. Even Chu Du could not compare to him. Now, Shadow Sect has also sent a letter. They want to cooperate with me. Hee. Shadow Sect already has a rank 8 Gu Immortal, but he seems to have a huge weakness. He goes insane at times. Fong Yuan pondered. He had fought Zishan Makoto in the upflowing river, so he had some understanding of Zishan Makoto's condition. Actually, if Fong Yuan did not refine Perseverance Gu and did not comprehend the immortal killer move Reverse Flow Protection Seal, he would have been doomed in the Battle of Reverse Flow River. He would have fallen into Ing Wuxie's trap. The remaining forces of the Shadow Sect had always been Fong Yuan's greatest threat. On the contrary, Providence's scheme used Fong Yuan as a pawn to seize sovereign immortal fetus Gu. Fong Yuan and Shadow Sect were mortal enemies with deep hatred. Shadow Sect wanted to recoup their losses and refine sovereign immortal fetus Gu again. They were likely to imitate old ancestor Shui, who in refining fortune rivaling heaven immortal Gu. Old ancestor Shui, who used Ma Hongyun as the main material for the Gu refinement. If Fong Yuan ended up in Shadow Sect's hands, he would not be able to escape the same fate. He would be the main immortal material for the immortal Gu refinement. His life would be worse than death. But now, Fong Yuan's battle strength had grown to a level where even rank 8 Gu immortals could not do anything to him. Thus, Shadow Sect took the initiative to seek cooperation with Fong Yuan. This change in attitude made Fong Yuan sigh deeply. With Reverse Flow Protection Seal, it was like a weakened version of the immortal Gu house. Even rank 8s could not do anything to it. This gave Fong Yuan a lot of confidence. But cooperating with Shadow Sect is like asking a tiger for its skin. Sixth Hair's letter was true. The reasons given were sufficient. Cooperation was beneficial to both sides. It was beneficial to both Shadow Sect and Fong Yuan. Warrior Lord, ignoring everything else, the soul path trap on Fong Yuan's immortal zombie body, as well as the secret of the sovereign immortal fetus, could be resolved in this cooperation. But Fong Yuan could not trust Shadow Sect. It was the same problem. Fong Yuan and Shadow Sect could not trust each other. Originally, they were mortal enemies who could not live under the same sky. How could they suddenly become friends? Even though both sides were rational people who prioritized benefits, the basis of cooperation between Gu immortals was not personal trust, but information path methods. And Fong Yuan was not good at information path. This was his weakness. But Shadow Sect's information path methods were too powerful. Spectral Soul's main body was a great grandmaster of all paths, Zombie Alliance, and Central Continent's Defy were proof of Shadow Sect's powerful information path methods. This was because any organization was built on the basis of the Information Path Alliance. Feng Yuan could not trust Shadow Sect. He did not dare to trust them. If he was schemed against by Information Path during the cooperation, he would be a fool. However, Feng Yuan did not reject him. He replied with a letter to probe Shadow Sect's sincerity. In the letter, he made a request. If he wanted to cooperate, he had to give Attitude Gu to him. Speaking of which, even though the rank 8 Attitude Immortal Gu was in Feng Yuan's hands, it was not Feng Yuan's. He Lulan had lent it to him. Back then, when they discussed the rental of the Immortal Gu, both sides had an agreement and agreed on a time limit. Once the time limit passed, Feng Yuan would not be able to use Attitude Immortal Gu. Because the will in Attitude Immortal Gu was not Feng Yuan's will, but He Lulan's will. Right now, there was not much time left before the deadline. Attitude Gu was a legendary Gu worm. It could be used by expending mental energy. It had low usage requirements and had outstanding effects. Ever since Feng Yuan obtained it, he had used it to avert danger many times. It was a huge help to him. Even though Attitude Immortal Gu did not have a direct offensive effect, it had a mystical effect when used as support. Once he lost Attitude Gu, the impact on Feng Yuan would be huge. Ignoring everything else, the Immortal Killer move Familiar Face could not be used. Even though Feng Yuan could use his Transformation Path Grandmaster Attainment level to redesign this Immortal Killer move, without the rank 8 core, the entire Immortal Killer move would fall by a lot. When disguised as Wu Yihai or someone else, the chances of being discovered would increase greatly. It would be very dangerous. If I can use this chance to resolve the problem of Attitude Gu, that would be for the best. Feng Yuan felt a trace of anticipation. Time was almost up. Feng Yuan activated Dark Limit Immortal Gu, increasing the effect of Dark Limit on himself again. Next, he stored away his Immortal Aperture and set off again. He headed towards the southwest direction. Central Continent, Celestial Court. In the hall, Fairy Myrtle was sitting cross-legged with a frown, activating Immortal Killer moves. Her whole body was emitting light purple smoke from her pores. She was using Wisdom Path methods to make deductions. However, after a while, Fairy Myrtle slowly opened her eyes with a head full of sweat. I have already used 7 killer moves, but I still cannot deduce the location of our Gu Immortals. Fairy Myrtle sighed. Central Continent's Gu Immortals attacked Northern Plains, but after the Battle of Reverse Flow River, Feng Yuan retreated. While Central Continent's Gu Immortals fought against Old Ancestor Shui Hu and Longevity Heaven, Central Continent wanted to save them. They sent reinforcements. But the first wave of Central Continent Gu Immortals went missing in Black Heaven. Fairy Myrtle could not deduce their location. How could she save them? She did not even know where to send reinforcements to. Duke Long, who was at the side, slowly opened his eyes. He was still very weak, as thin as a match, and extremely old. It seems that Giant Sun Immortal has made many arrangements in Northern Plains. Have you deduced Lu Guanyi's location? Duke Long asked. Fairy Myrtle shook her head. He seems to have defensive strength that can resist the deductions of Wisdom Path Gu Immortals, but it is not strong. However, we still don't have enough clues about him. If we have 1 or 2 crucial clues, we can definitely expose him to us. Duke Long heard this and nodded. He was silent for a while before speaking again. Forget it. Continue to deduce our Gu Immortals and Lu Guanyi's location. Also, send me to Hidden Dragon Cave. Eastern Sea. Feng Yuan sighed helplessly. He had no choice but to place his Immortal Aperture again. Lu Guanyi was famous throughout the 5 regions. This caused Feng Yuan's Dark Limits effect to be consumed rapidly. To keep it a secret, Feng Yuan could only move and stop occasionally. The Immortal Aperture's entrance opened. Large amounts of Heaven and Earth Qi were absorbed. The sovereign immortal body could absorb Heaven and Earth Qi in any region to nourish itself. It was not like ordinary Gu Immortals who could only absorb Heaven and Earth Qi in their own regions. If they were in other regions, they could forcefully absorb Heaven and Earth Qi, but because of the difference in Heaven and Earth Qi, the Immortal Aperture would shake and large amounts of resources would dry up. Right now, the Sovereign Immortal Aperture had too many resources. There were large numbers of desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts. Thus, every time it absorbed heaven and earth chi, the scale was huge, like a whale swallowing. Chapter 1300. It was fine if reverse flow river was outside, but if it was kept in the immortal aperture for a long time, it would expend a lot of heaven and earth chi. Once heaven and earth chi was lacking, the immortal aperture would become unstable. Thus, Feng Yuan had to place his immortal aperture to absorb heaven and earth chi from the outside world to replenish himself. After absorbing for a while, Feng Yuan closed his immortal aperture's entrance. Arriving at reverse flow river, he was holding an immortal zombie. It was his original body. He threw the immortal zombie body into reverse flow river. The immortal zombie body immediately went down smoothly. Using perseverance immortal goo and reverse flow river, Feng Yuan experimented with all kinds of methods he could think of, but it was useless. So it was like this. The soul path Tao marks on the immortal zombie body cannot be destroyed or suppressed by reverse flow river. After all, they are only soul path Tao marks, not immortal goo. Rank 1 to 8 immortal goo cannot be used in reverse flow river, but Tao marks can be used. Like before I conquered reverse flow river, the Tao marks on the goo immortals could still protect them. Rank 8 goo immortals are still the strongest in the river. Feng Yuan analyzed, trying to find the reason for his failure. He wanted to use reverse flow river to resolve the soul path trap on the immortal zombie body, but it was impossible. Feng Yuan was not dejected. In fact, he had guessed it before experimenting. He placed the immortal zombie body back on Heaven Seal Mountain, using the goo formation there to seal it again. Next, he started to refine goo. A nightmare demonic colt's corpse was placed in front of him. Feng Yuan waved his finger like a blade. A golden light flashed in the air. The golden light entered the nightmare demonic colt's body, vanishing in an instant. The nightmare demonic colt's front right leg was immediately cut off. There was no blood. After these nightmare demonic colts died, Feng Yuan asked the land spirits in his immortal aperture to deal with these immortal materials. The blood of the nightmare colt had already been extracted and mixed in a certain place. Feng Yuan lifted it, separating the nightmare demonic colt's front right leg from its body. Then, he spat out flames and began to deal with the right foreleg. After 3 days, the right foreleg finally melted into a purplish-black liquid. Feng Yuan continued to throw in many goo worms to refine goo. The dozen or so steps only took a quarter of an hour. The purple-black liquid exploded. 100 dream path mortal goo flew around in the air. However, with a single thought from Feng Yuan, they obediently returned to Feng Yuan's side. 100 dream path mortal goo. This was only the right front leg of a nightmare colt. He spent the most time dealing with this immortal material. This step took Feng Yuan 3 days. The rest of the steps only added up to a quarter of an hour. This efficiency was extremely high. It was a stark contrast to Feng Yuan's goo refinement in the dream realm. In the dream realm, Feng Yuan first needed to collect dream path goo materials before refining goo. There was a risk in entering the dream realm. He needed to use the immortal killer move Unravel Dream to get out of the dream realm. Refining dream path mortal goo required an immortal killer move. The cost was quite high. But now, Feng Yuan had this batch of nightmare demonic colts. The refinement of dream path mortal goo was no longer the same as before. Like earlier, when I used the spring dream fruit to refine dream path mortal goo, the efficiency was very high. Actually, my goo refinement method can still be improved. For example, the cutting method earlier used metal path methods. It was not a good combination and would expend some dream path Tao marks. I can also experiment with other methods to deal with the immortal material, to see if there is a more efficient method. During the goo refinement process, Sixth Hair sent another message. Using Langya Blessed Land, Sixth Hair had already become the middleman for Feng Yuan and Zishan Makoto to communicate with each other. In the letter, Zishan Makoto did not give in. He told Feng Yuan directly. If he wanted to truly control Attitude Goo, he needed to work together. As long as both sides cooperated, Attitude Goo would be given to him first. This time, Shadow Sect even mentioned the Sovereign Immortal Aperture's weakness, but they did not say what it was. Rank 8 goo immortals are indeed not easy to deal with. Weakness? Is Shadow Sect just trying to scare me? Or is this true? This letter had a huge impact on Fang Yuan. But soon, his mental state calmed down. He had seen his fair share of storms and waves. What could this little scheme and threat amount to? It seems that I have to work hard myself. Fang Yuan sent a letter back to Bargain. He continued to feign civility with Shadow Sect. But he had already realized that Shadow Sect would not give attitude Gu to him before they cooperated. Fang Yuan began to design a new Immortal Killer move. He intended to use this Immortal Killer move to refine attitude Gu. He soon encountered a problem. The reason was that even though he had many Immortal Gu, they were not suitable for this aspect. It was not like when he was deducing Reverse Flow Protection Seal. Fang Yuan had Pulling Water Immortal Gu and Perseverance Immortal Gu. He could use them as the core of his Immortal Killer move. And now, Fang Yuan only had other Immortal Gu. He did not have an Immortal Gu that could refine attitude Gu. He could only use a vast number of Mortal Gu to assist him. It would be great if there was a chance to exchange Gu. This thought appeared in Fang Yuan's mind and could not be stopped. Exchange Immortal Gu. Fang Yuan had a shocking number of Immortal Gu now. But in fact, a portion of them were not suitable for Fang Yuan, or rather, they did not have much value in the short term. Wisdom Sword and Years flow like water. Even though they could not be used now, they were rank 8. Fang Yuan would not exchange them. Fang Yuan did not have many Sword Path Dao marks. His Sword Path attainment level was also ordinary, but Sword Eyebrows, Wave Sword, Sword Escape, and other Sword Path Immortal Gu were the foundation of his battle strength. They could not be shaken temporarily. Perhaps he could exchange for Change Soul Immortal Gu. Woman's Heart was a Poison Path Immortal Gu. It was rarely used. Flying Bear Strength Immortal Gu was a Strength Path Immortal Gu. But when Fang Yuan transformed into an Ancient Sword Dragon, this Immortal Gu was not suitable. And Bone Spike Immortal Gu, in Fang Yuan's current cultivation system, was something that he could not use at all. Perceivable Dao Immortal Gu could inspect Dao marks. It had a mystical effect, but to Fang Yuan, it was not very useful. This Immortal Gu needed to be tested. All in all, Woman's Heart, Flying Bear Strength, and Bone Spike, these 3 Immortal Gu had little use for Fang Yuan. If he could exchange them for something else suitable for Fang Yuan, that would be for the best. But how could it be easy to exchange Gu? During the 5 Regions Chaotic War, it was very popular. With the current situation, it was hard to have such a high-level Gu Immortal trading convention. Just like this, Fang Yuan moved and stopped. It was not that he did not want to move quickly, it was just that every step was difficult. Along the way, after placing his Immortal Aperture, he was either refining Dream Path Mortal Gu or deducing Immortal Killer moves, attempting to make attitude Gu his own. Chapter 1301. We finally got through the regional wall. Wu Xie let out a breath of air. Looking at the vast sea, he had an extremely tired expression. He Lulan and Bai Ningbing, who were beside him, were also not in a better state. After leaving Northern Plains, Shadow Sect's group went to Eastern Sea. They did not have the sovereign immortal body. Every time they passed a regional wall, it was a difficult test. Thankfully, they had great strength. They were elites among Gu immortals. Even though their immortal apertures were damaged, they did not lose any members. They were not in a hurry to leave. After entering Eastern Sea, they randomly chose an island. On this nameless island, Wu Xie instructed by Ningbing and He Lulan to set up a refinement path Gu formation. After the Gu formation was set up, Wu Xie walked to the center of the Gu formation and took out a purple gold rock, starting to process this immortal material. As for Bai Ningbing and He Lulan, they were outside the Gu formation, guarding against any unexpected enemies. Not long after, the purple gold rock melted again. Mini-Man Gu Immortal Zishan Makoto woke up from it. He was a rank 8 Gu Immortal. Normally speaking, to cross the 5 regions, he had to go to Black Heaven or White Heaven. But above Northern Plains, Black Heaven and White Heaven were already controlled by Luck Suppression Heavenly Palace. Longevity Heaven was in control. Shadow Sect's group naturally could not walk right into the trap. The outcome of Central Continent's Gu Immortals was right in front of them. Shadow Sect had a deep foundation. Zishan Makoto fell into deep sleep again. A thin layer of purple gold rock formed on his body. He had no aura. His life force was concealed to the extreme. He was no different from a dead being. Using such a mystical method, Zishan Makoto was led by Ing Wu Xie to pass through the regional wall and arrive in Eastern Sea. The purple gold rock was thin. Ing Wu Xie, who had a specialized method, could easily refine it. It was much easier than when Lady Wan Shou processed the purple gold rock. Eastern Sea. Zishan Makoto woke up, looking at the vast sea outside the island. He sighed inwardly. Under his lead, Shadow Sect's group first stored the Gu formation, erasing all traces. Next, the 4 Gu immortals activated the ancient battle formation omnidirectional travel. A moment later, they arrived at the turbulent sea region. With Zishan Makoto in the lead, wherever they went, none of the ocean currents could obstruct them. Soon, the people from the Shadow Sect arrived at the center of the turbulent waters. Where are the tributaries of the River of Time in this area? Ing Wu Xie felt that it was rather strange that his search was fruitless. Could it be that the tributary of the River of Time has gone somewhere else? He Lulan speculated. It's not in the center, but in the middle of the reverse flow river. Continuing to investigate, Zishan Makoto soon found some key clues. That tributary of the River of Time has already been taken away by someone else. His tone was heavy. How could this be? Who did it? Could it be Feng Yuan? Ing Wu Xie's first thought was Feng Yuan. However, Zishan Makoto shook his head. This technique shouldn't be his. It was someone else. Forget it. Since we cannot use this tributary of the River of Time, we will go to the next place. There is another tributary of the River of Time there. The group of 4 from the Shadow Sect quickly left the turbulent flow sea region. At the other end of Eastern Sea, the sky was clear and blue. It was a scene of life and death. On the surface of the sea, a life and death battle was taking place. Leave quickly. I was hit by his lightning soul needle. He can sense me at all times. I can't leave now. I can't implicate you. Immortal Hua Dai was lying in the arms of a male Gu immortal, she said weakly. She was wearing a palace dress. Her sleeves were fluttering in the wind. Her skin was soft and tender. Her beautiful eyes were filled with weakness at this moment. Blood was flowing out of her lips. Her injuries were severe. Especially on the surface of her skin, there were small and sharp sparks of lightning. This was the sign of being hit by the immortal killer move Lightning Soul Needle. No, the male Gu immortal did not even think. He rejected without hesitation. He had a broad back and a thin waist. He wore a set of battle armor. Even though he was covered in injuries, it could not conceal his fierceness. How can I leave you behind? If I escape now, how will I explain it to Lord Miaoming Shan? Although he said so, deep in his gaze towards immortal Hua Dai, there was affection hidden in his eyes. He was Fengjiang, immortal Hua Dai, and Gu Chi. These 3 Gu immortals were subordinates of the Eastern Sea Space Path expert Miaoming Shan. Miaoming Shan wanted to find the tributary of the River of Time in the turbulent flow sea area. Thus, these 3 Gu immortals would take turns to guard the turbulent flow sea area. When they met any Gu immortal who went to explore the turbulent flow sea area, they would talk to them, hoping that they would help. Then you can die together. There was only one person chasing after them, but he had rank 7 cultivation level. His name was Gu Wan. He wore a blue robe. His skin was dry and tough like tree bark. His eyes shined with red light. He had sharp teeth and a ruthless expression. This person was quite senior. He was quite famous in Eastern Sea. He was a Lightning Path Grandmaster. But once, when he used an immortal killer move, he failed and suffered a backlash. He had to turn into an immortal zombie. Even so, he had outstanding battle strength. He had 2 immortal Gu. He was able to force the rank 6 immortal Hua Dai and Feng Jiang to flee. Hand over the year cycle powder. You 2 are quite daring. You actually dared to snatch my immortal material. If you hand it over obediently, I might leave your corpses intact. Gu Wen laughed sinisterly. His fierce aura surged as he got closer and closer. Immortal Hua Dai said angrily, "We found this year cycle powder first. How can it be yours? I waited here for half a month, but because I was careless, you guys got it before me." Gu Wen shouted angrily. Immortal Hua Dai was furious. Lord Miaoming Shan found this year cycle powder 3 years ago. He set up a Gu formation around it. Every few months, I would come to the Gu formation to nurture it. No matter how much nonsense you spout, you cannot change this fact. Immortal Hua Dai pointed out the truth. Gu Wen did not retort. His expression turned grim. Humph, you have a sharp tongue. After I catch up to you, I will kill you first. Demonic path scoundrel, don't be arrogant. At this time, a loud voice resounded in the three immortals' ears. Who is it? Gu Wen's expression changed as he shouted. Just as he said that, the sea surface suddenly protruded like a small hill. Next, the hill was smashed by the beast inside. Wind howled and water splashed everywhere. A huge blue-scaled sea dragon appeared in front of the three immortals. The sea dragon spoke, "Demon, die." The three immortals saw this and understood immediately. This blue-scaled sea dragon was a Gu immortal that had transformed into it. Immortal Hua Dai and Fengjiang were surprised and joyful. Gu Wen became even more furious. Who asked you to be a busybody? Take this killer move. Saying so, he breathed in deeply and spat at his right palm. What he spat out was not saliva, but a lightning bolt that was the size of an egg. The lightning was attached to Gu Wen's right palm. With a boom, a huge pillar of lightning violently shot out from his right palm. The blue-scaled sea dragon didn't dodge. Instead, it opened its mouth wide in response to the incoming lightning pillar. Dragon breath spit. Gu Wen saw this and laughed internally. This move of mine can last for a few minutes, but the dragon breath is shot out continuously. How can it block it? But the blue-scaled sea dragon's dragon breath did not stop. The dragon breath was like a pillar of water. It collided with the lightning bolt. Next, the powerful dragon breath destroyed the lightning bolt. In a few breaths of time, it arrived in front of Gu Wen. How can this be? What kind of dragon breath is this? Gu Wen showed an expression of disbelief. He hurriedly dodged to the side. The blue-scaled sea dragon turned its head slightly. Its dragon breath was like a pillar as it swept over again. Gu Wen frowned, snorting angrily. Consider yourselves lucky. I will let you off this time. Next, he directly retreated, turning into a bolt of lightning as he moved extremely quickly. The blue-scaled sea dragon did not chase. It watched as Gu Wen left. He is going back to the Gu formation. There is still a large amount of year cycle powder left there. Immortal Hua Dai's words exposed Gu Wen's thoughts. Fengjiang placed Immortal Hua Dai down as he cupped his fists at the blue-scaled sea dragon. You are a righteous person. You repelled the enemy and saved my life. I will never forget this favor. May I know your name? The blue-scaled sea dragon suddenly transformed into an ordinary-looking Gu immortal. He smiled. I am Chu Ying. Fairy Hua Dai. How have you been? Immortal Hua Dai was overjoyed. To think that you were Chu Ying. Seeing that Fengjiang was looking at her, Immortal Hua Dai explained. Thanks to this Chu Ying, we were able to find that tributary of the River of Time in the turbulent flow sea area. Only Lord Miao Ming Shun could obtain the tributary of the River of Time. Chapter 1302. So there is such a connection. Hearing Immortal Hua Dai's introduction, Fengjiang's expression relaxed. He was overjoyed. Most of his wariness was gone. The so-called Chu Ying was naturally Feng Yuan in disguise. He stored his immortal aperture and found that there were traces of Gu immortals fighting in the surrounding sea area. Out of curiosity, he followed the traces to see if he could take advantage of them. But he found that Immortal Hua Dai and another Gu immortal, Fengjiang, were being chased. And the pursuer was only a rank 7 immortal zombie. For Feng Yuan, such a person was not enough. Long ago, Feng Yuan had helped Immortal Hua Dai to contact the Space Path Gu immortal expert behind Immortal Hua Dai, Miao Ming Shun. This person had a method to find out about the blue dragon whale. And this blue dragon whale had an extraordinary origin. It had once received guidance from Paradise Earth Immortal Venerable. It had an immortal aperture that was filled with treasures. It was like Northern Plains dog-tail life extending ferret, Mao Li Chiu. But the blue dragon whale's intelligence was not awakened. It only followed its instincts and swam in the sea. Paradise Earth Immortal Venerable not only opened an immortal aperture for it, he even used an immortal killer move on its body. As such, this blue dragon whale had no natural enemies and was not dangerous. The azure dragon whale had a gentle temperament and was harmless. However, Its defensive abilities also rendered any malicious existence helpless. This was Paradise Earth Immortal Venerable's personality and style. According to the secret rumors of his previous life, the blue dragon whale had a true inheritance left behind by Paradise Earth Immortal Venerable. Feng Yuan remembered that Miao Ming Shun had explored the blue dragon whale's inner world many times. But because of the aperture, even though he had gains each time, he did not obtain the true inheritance. Feng Yuan naturally wanted this. Thus, when he saw Immortal Huadai being chased, he realized that this was a rare chance to show goodwill to Miao Ming Shun again. Thus, he interfered and sent the lightning path Immortal Zombie Guwan away. He did not transform into an ancient sword dragon. Ancient sword dragons could not be seen in the light anymore. Because Lu Guanyi had once used the ancient sword dragon transformation to kill Yelu Kunxing in Northern Plains. Right now, Lu Guanyi's identity was Reverse Flow River Lord. Many of the rank 8s here were helpless against him. His name shook the world. Almost everyone in the Gu Immortal world knew of him. Who knew how many people were interested in Lu Guanyi, trying to figure out his background. The fact that Lu Guanyi had mastered the ancient sword serpent transformation was already widely known. Thus, if Feng Yuan used ancient sword dragon transformation now, other Gu Immortals would immediately think of Lu Guanyi. This was the burden of fame. Even though Feng Yuan could not use ancient sword dragon transformation, he had change form Immortal Gu. He could transform into all living beings in this world at will. Therefore, this time, he transformed into a blue-scaled sea dragon that was unique to the East Sea. This was also an ancient desolate beast. It was just that its might could not be compared to the ancient sword dragon. But Feng Yuan could still use Dragon Breath Immortal Gu. What was worth mentioning was that the blue-scaled sea dragon's dragon breath was also breathed out. The reason why he could win against the lightning path Immortal Zombie Gu was because Feng Yuan used Perseverance Immortal Gu at the same time. Rank 7 Perseverance Immortal Gu. After Feng Yuan obtained it, he naturally had a lot of understanding and analysis of it. Gu Immortals nurture, use, and refine. These three aspects required a lot of effort. After coming to Eastern Sea for a few days, Feng Yuan already understood some of the usage methods of Perseverance Immortal Gu. Other than conquering Reverse Flow River, Perseverance Immortal Gu could make other Immortal Gu or Immortal Killer moves last longer. For example, the blue-scaled sea dragon's Dragon Breath. If Feng Yuan only used Dragon Breath Immortal Gu, Dragon Breath could not deviate from the sea dragon's logic. It could only be breathed out. It would only be slightly stronger. But if he used Perseverance Immortal Gu when he breathed out Dragon Breath, the Dragon Breath could be breathed out for a long time. It would be endless. Of course, the breathing time could not be too long. Dragon's Breath was a heavy burden on the throat. Even a true blue-scaled sea dragon had to spit out a mouthful of Dragon's Breath. This was a form of self-protection in the evolution of living beings. Thankfully, even though that Guwan had some reputation, after fighting for a while, he understood that Feng Yuan was a strong enemy. He wisely retreated. After all, demonic path Gu Immortals always prioritized benefits. I wonder who you are? Feng Yuan looked at Immortal Hua Dai. I am Lord Miao Mingshun's subordinate, Feng Jiang. Lord Chu, you are my benefactor. I do not know how to thank you. Feng Jiang introduced himself. He was very enthusiastic. He was filled with gratitude towards Feng Yuan. No need to thank me. It was just a small matter. I happened to see him by chance, so I helped him. Even though I am a secluded cultivator in Eastern Sea, I have only come out recently, but I do not like the demonic path's actions. This is my nature, and because Fairy Huadai is my friend, it was only natural for me to help. Feng Yuan was very humble. Immortal Huadai and Feng Jiang heard this. Their impression of Feng Yuan grew even more favorable. The three immortals talked for a while before Immortal Huadai sighed. It is a pity. So many year-ring powder, most of them ended up in Gu Wen's hands. Our hard work over these years was all wasted on him. We should set up that Gu formation in a more secretive manner. Feng Jiang quickly consoled. All right, Xiao Dai, don't blame yourself. Eastern Sea is so huge, but Gu Wen found this Gu formation. We are not skilled in formation path. The Gu formation that we set up was already the best we could. If we want it to be more secretive, we will need to add an Immortal Gu. Feng Yuan smiled. Listen to me. Even though the year ring powder is lost, you two are still alive. That is hope. Don't be too pessimistic. There are gains and losses. Isn't life supposed to be filled with gains and losses? Feng Jiang laughed heartily. Lord Chu's words are profound. I need to think deeply about them. Immortal Huadai was still frowning. She had a worried expression. That is the only logic I have. It is just that these year ring powder are usually lost. So be it. But this time, Lord Miao Mingshan is attending the trading convention. One of his Gu immortal friends needs this. Lord Miao Mingshan agreed to this person's request. There are only a few days left until the convention, but the year ring powder was taken away. What do we do now? Hearing this, Feng Zhang's expression turned grim. That's right. We returned empty-handed. Even if Lord Miao Mingshan does not blame us, we will feel very guilty. This is our fault. Most importantly, we let Lord Miao Mingshan go back on his word. This is our fault. Trading convention? Feng Yuan's heart jumped. Not long ago, he was still thinking about exchanging some of the immortal goo that he did not have. He didn't expect that he would run into a trade fair in the East China Sea when he was dozing off. Eastern Sea was the region with the richest resources in the 5 regions. Even Central Continent could not compare to it. Eastern Sea's Gu immortals were also very wealthy. Thus, Eastern Sea's trading convention was very famous in the 5 regions. It was very high-end. Gu immortals would often exchange their immortal Gu. Of course, it was not that the other 4 regions did not have such trading conventions. It was just that there were too few of them. Feng Yuan could not participate in them. Only Eastern Sea's trading convention was a good opportunity for him. I have an immortal Gu that I want to exchange. I want to participate in this trading convention. I wonder if it is possible? Feng Yuan did not conceal his intentions. He asked directly. Immortal Huadai and Feng Jiang looked at each other. The former said, "This trading convention has high standards. We do not have the qualifications to participate. We do not have the ability to recommend anyone. But Lord Chu-Ing is different. We are indebted to him. How about this? Lord Chu-Ing will come with us first. After we meet him, we will see what he has to say." Okay. Feng Yuan immediately nodded. Can we go now? He was very decisive. Because time was limited. The power of dark limit on his body would be depleted as other Gu immortals deduced it. Immortal Huadai and Feng Jiang had hesitant expressions. Their mission to collect the year cycle powder had failed. They actually wanted Feng Yuan to help them take back the year cycle powder. But they could not bring themselves to do so. Actually, Feng Yuan had already seen through their intentions. In the process of the conversation, he firmly grasped the initiative and did not give them a chance to speak. Right now, Feng Yuan could even make rank 8 Gu immortals helpless against him. But there was a flaw. He could not see the light of day. Be it ancient sword dragon transformation or reverse flow protection seal, they could not be used easily. Once they were used, they had to consider how to keep it a secret. Once Feng Yuan exposed too many clues, his other identity or secrets would be deduced. By then, Wu Yihai's identity would be exposed. Feng Yuan finally entered the Super Gu formation with much difficulty. He came into contact with that huge dream realm. If he were to miss this great opportunity, it would have an extremely disastrous effect on the development of his cultivation. Feng Jiang and Immortal Huadai had no choice but to bring Feng Yuan away from this place. They could not bring themselves to speak. He saved their lives, but they still had to urge their benefactor to fight against a strong enemy. They could not be thick-skinned enough to speak about this. The 3 immortals traveled quickly. They did not stop along the way. However, they conversed and conversed along the way. In fact, even though Immortal Huadai had met Feng Yuan twice and had a deep impression of him, she did not know about Chu Ying's background. Feng Yuan knew Immortal Huadai's intention of probing him. Thus he gave a half-truth and half-falsehood about his origin. In the 500 years of his previous life, he had lived in Eastern Sea for a period of time. His words were not fake. Especially the small details and experiences in his life. They were very real. Immortal Huadai and Feng Jiang resonated with him. How could Feng Yuan expose himself here? When they met Miao Mingshan, Immortal Huadai and Feng Jiang had a very good impression of the amiable, rank 7 secluded cultivator Chu Ying. But they did not know that Feng Yuan was the true demon. Compared to him, Immortal Zombie Gu Wen's life cycle powder was nothing. Chapter 1303. Eastern Sea. Swoosh. In an ordinary sea area, there was a nameless island. It was barren and barren. There were only strange rocks. Several Gu immortals floated down from the sky. They were Fang Yuan, Immortal Huadai, Fengjiang, and the rest. To think that such a trading convention would be held on such a barren island. Fang Yuan stepped on this island as he sighed internally. Brother Chu, you might not know, but for such a large trading convention, the location is usually decided a few days ago to prevent people from plotting against us. A Gu immortal beside Fang Yuan replied. This male Gu immortal was neither tall nor short. He was neither fat nor thin. His appearance was above average. His facial features were ordinary. Only his wide nose left a deep impression. This person was the famous Rank 7 Space Path Gu immortal expert in Eastern Sea, Miao Mingshen. In terms of appearance, this person was not outstanding. But after Fang Yuan interacted with him, even though they did not interact for long, he could feel that this person was outstanding in many aspects. He could not be underestimated. Fang Yuan used Chu Ying's identity to save Immortal Huadai and Fengjiang. He learned about the trading convention. Next, Fang Yuan followed Immortal Huadai and Fengjiang to meet Miao Mingshen. Miao Mingshen did not hesitate. He agreed to Fang Yuan's request to join the trading convention. You helped me twice. You saved Xiao Dai and Xiao Feng's lives. Why would I reject a mere trading convention? Please come. He was a rank 7 Gu immortal expert. While Chu Ying was a secluded cultivator, he was not famous. But Miao Mingshen did not put on any airs. He was very friendly and friendly. His words were polite and heartwarming. Thus, Fang Yuan and Miao Mingshen came to this place to join the trading convention. The four of them had just stepped on the island when a Gu immortal came out of a strange rock. So it's Miao Mingshen, you're here. A Gu immortal with a large head and small body that looked like a dwarf greeted. Haha, tu, long time no see. Miao Mingshen was very enthusiastic. He laughed loudly as he welcomed him. Come, let me introduce you. This is East Sea's secluded cultivator Chu Ying. This is our East Sea's rare earth path Grandmaster Tu, Miao Mingshen said. Greetings, immortal friend Tuesday. Fang Yuan was also very polite, but his expression was wooden. He pretended to be a solitary cultivator who wasn't good at socializing. There was no flaw in his disguise. Tu looked at Fang Yuan and grinned, showing his yellow teeth as he laughed. It seems that you have received Miao Mingshen's recommendation, and this is the first time you are participating in such a trade fair? Haha, back then, I was also recommended by Miao Mingshen to participate. Tu was also very polite. He thought, Miao Mingshen's foresight is not bad. Those who can be recommended by him are all outstanding people. This Chu Ying looks ordinary and is not famous, but to be valued by Miao Mingshen, he is not simple. As he thought of this, Tu said, Follow me down. I am the first to arrive. Since I have nothing to do, I will first open up a space under the island. Thank you, Brother Tuesday. Actually, this time, I am leading the trade fair. Miao Mingshen immediately said respectfully, Haha, it is just an underground cave. It will not take much effort. Let's go. Tu saw Miao Mingshen and felt like he was seeing an old friend. He grabbed Miao Mingshen's arm and led him underground. Wherever his footsteps went, the originally solid ground melted and flowed like water, forming a wide tunnel that led straight to the bottom of the island. Tu and Miao Mingshen walked in front while Fang Yuan, Fengjiang, and Immortal Huadai walked behind them. Tu and Miao Mingshen conversed along the way. Miao Mingshen's communication skills were outstanding. Tu laughed continuously as his laughter reverberated underground. Furthermore, Miao Mingshen did not ignore Fang Yuan. He turned to speak to Fang Yuan from time to time. His words seemed ordinary, but they were natural and did not make Fang Yuan feel like he was alone or that he was being neglected. The underground cave was indeed ordinary, but it was spacious. On a tall platform, there were several stone chairs. They were all wide. The stone chairs had carvings on them. They looked like flowing water. They were very smooth. This showed Tuo's deep sense of aesthetics, as well as his meticulous mind. Fang Yuan counted carefully. There were only 6 stone chairs. It seems that this trade fair was originally planned to have only 6 participants, but it seems like this trade fair only has 6 participants. Immortal Huadai and Fengjiang are not included. Once the trading fair starts, they will leave this place and guard it. Fang Yuan guessed. Since there is a newcomer, I will add another chair. Tuwa stomped his foot as a mound of soil rose up from the ground. It flowed like water. In the blink of an eye, it turned into another stone chair. It looked like it was crafted by a skilled craftsman. Fang Yuan and the rest sat down, waiting for the other Gu immortals to arrive. A moment later, 2 Gu immortals arrived. The former was a female immortal with the appearance of a child. She had 2 ponytails, her eyes were round and round, but she looked very mature. She was Tonghua, Northern Eastern Sea, a famous light path Gu immortal with rank 7 cultivation level. The latter was a male immortal. He had an aquiline nose and a dark gaze. He wore a messy black robe. He was Wu Maiyang, a dark path Gu immortal. He had outstanding battle strength among rank 7 Gu immortals. His immortal killer move Dark Arrow Veil had once defeated 3 rank 7 Gu immortals. This battle made him famous in Eastern Sea's Gu immortal world. Tonghua chattered on and on, while Wu Maiyang was very quiet. Both sides continued to talk. Under Miao Ming Shun's intentional guidance, the atmosphere became harmonious. 15 minutes later, a third Gu immortal entered this underground space. He was Gong Liangbai, a wisdom path Gu immortal who cultivated some wood path methods. Of course, wisdom path was his main focus. Wisdom path Gu immortals were few in number, especially people like Fang Yuan who had inherited a complete wisdom path true inheritance. And Gong Liangbai not only had a complete wisdom path true inheritance, he had also cultivated it. Even though he could not compare to the 3 most famous wisdom path Gu immortals, he had a huge network among lone immortals. He was willing to make deductions for others in exchange for remuneration. Bipolar Pan Armor Pill, Huan Hidden in Nangong, and Dragon Turtle, Traveling in Adversity Sea. This poem was talking about the 3 most powerful wisdom path Gu immortals in the current Eastern Sea Gu immortal world. Song Jiadan and Huan were righteous path members. They rarely worked for lone immortals. As for Dragon Turtle Immortal, he stayed in Adversity Sea for a long time. His footsteps were vague and hard to trace. Gong Liangbai, after this trading convention, let's have a good chat. I have some things that I want you to deduce. Miao Ming Shan said as they talked. Don't tell me it's that Lu Guanyi? Recently, I've received many requests from fellow immortals, and they're all here for this person. Gong Liangbai smiled. Of course not. Miao Ming Shan denied with a smile. Gong Liangbai nodded. That's good. Speaking of which, I have made deductions 5 times and failed each time. The main reason is that there are too few clues, and that Lu Guanyi also has methods to defend against deductions. Fang Yuan listened quietly from the side. His expression did not change, but he felt awkward internally. This topic attracted the interest of the other Gu immortals. Tua shouted. This Lu Guanyi is really famous now. He is completely famous. No matter who it is, as long as they can use rank 7 cultivation level to make a rank 8 Gu immortal helpless against them, they will be famous in history. Tonghua sighed. To be able to resist rank 8 with rank 7 cultivation level, I really want to see that. Miao Mingshin shook his head and smiled bitterly. It is a pity that I am not fated to meet such a person. Fang Yuan was sitting on the chair beside him. Hearing this, he said expressionlessly, I heard that rank 7 can resist rank 8s mainly because that Lu Guanyi became the reverse flow river lord. This reverse flow river is a secluded domain of heaven and earth, but what great expert can make a rank 8 powerhouse helpless against it? Thus, the immortals topic shifted from Lu Guanyi to reverse flow river. Fang Yuan steered the topic without batting an eyelid. This time, the Gu immortals talked until evening. But night fell over Eastern Sea. The moon had just risen when the trading convention started. The other 2 Gu immortals also arrived. The trading convention officially started. According to the rules, Tonghua walked onto the stage. This is a desolate plant. I was exploring a deep sea when I found it. That time, in the dark sea, I saw a bright light ahead of me. I moved towards the light. After moving for several minutes, I arrived at the place where the light was. That place was simply a light path paradise. The light was dazzling. It illuminated the surroundings. At first, I thought that this was the light from the corals. But soon, I found that the corals had a layer of green fungi on them. These green fungi are desolate plants. They can be seen everywhere. I named them light shine fungi. They contain light path dow marks and can emit intense light. Tonghua slowly introduced her discovery and the process of naming the light shine fungi. Feng Yuan was a little surprised. He did not expect that the trading convention had just started, and he already found what he wanted. Chapter 1304. Feng Yuan needed light. The first was aurora light. He had brought in large numbers of dazzling light, goo to increase the aurora light in his immortal aperture. The denser the aurora light, the more flowing light fruits he could condense. And rank 8 immortal goo, attitude, used them as food. The light that a desolate plant like the illumination fungus could provide was naturally not the colorful aurora. However, this was not the final conclusion. Humans were intelligent and knew how to adapt to circumstances. In this world, there were methods to modify and graft plants. Wood path goo immortals specialized in this. Every path had their specialty, and wood path goo immortals were very skilled in managing their immortal apertures. Thus, if Feng Yuan brought in light shine fungi, he might be able to use wood path methods to modify them and create new aurora shine fungi. It was not impossible. Other than attitude goo, there was wisdom sword immortal goo. Wisdom sword immortal goo's food was multicolored overlord flowers. To grow multicolored overlord flowers on a large scale, there were 3 conditions. One was light, the second was sweet air, and the third was pearl soil. The latter 2 were easy to achieve, but light was difficult. Feng Yuan's immortal aperture had light path dow marks, and he had annexed a light path blessed land some time ago, but it was still far from Feng Yuan's standards. If he used light shine fungi, he could solve the problem of growing multicolored overlord flowers on a large scale. However, there was still a bit of doubt in this regard. That was, the environment that light shine fungi grew in was deep sea. If it was in another environment, could it maintain its vitality? That should not be a problem. After all, light shine fungi are desolate plants. Forget about aurora light. I looted Lu tribe's jade light pit. I had a lot of replenishment. Even though it is a bit off from the standard, it is not far from it. But multicolored overlord flowers are different. They are far from the standard. After all, I do not have a lot of light path dow marks, and I cannot use all of them on multicolored overlord flowers. Other life forms also need light. Oh, right. I have transformation path dow marks. At the crucial moment, I can turn them into light path dow marks to replenish them. While Feng Yuan was thinking, Tonghua continued, I'm willing to use this batch of luminous fungi to exchange for 3 Zhongla water elephants. Once she said that, one of the Gu immortals replied, Heavy building water elephant. I have one with me. I wonder how many heavy building water elephants Tonghua wants? The Chonglu water elephant was a beast unique to the East Sea. It was of different sizes and had white teeth and blue skin. The water elephant of the first floor was shaped like a small boat, and there was a layer of blue jade skeleton on its back, forming the shape of a tower. The 2-story building water elephant was slightly larger in size and had 2 layers of blue jade bones on its back, so on and so forth. The 6-story building water elephant had a wide back like a ship. It was a level 1 dire beast. 7-story floor water elephant, ancient desolate beast. The 8-story pagoda water elephant was a primordial desolate beast that was extremely rare. The 9-story building water elephant did not exist. Be it beasts, plants, or even variant humans, none of them had ever reached the 9th transformation. Other than humans, there were 10 rank 9 Gu Venerables among them. They were unique among all living beings. Tonghua displayed the size of the light shine fungi in her hands, informing the Gu immortals that she was willing to exchange for 3 6-story building water elephants. This price was not expensive, it was very fair. That Gu immortal frowned. But I only have 1 6-story building water elephant. The light shine fungi can be disassembled. Are you willing to exchange for it? Tonghua hesitated. He might not be telling the truth. After thinking about it, Tonghua nodded. Then let's exchange. Thus, the first transaction was completed. Both sides made the transaction quickly. I want some light shine fungi, but I do not have any heavy building water elephants. I wonder if you can accept immortal Yuan stone? Fong Yuan asked. Tong Hua shook her head, but she did not reject Fong Yuan. I do not have any heavy building water elephants, so forget it. However, my light shine fungi will be sold in treasure yellow heaven in the future. Fellow immortal, you can buy them yourself at that time. In fact, Eastern Sea was mostly water path goo immortals, and light shine fungi were very suitable for Eastern Sea goo immortals. Like Wu Hai, his entire immortal aperture was an ocean. Tong Hua was only using this new thing to test the waters, to see if there was a chance to gain more benefits. As for selling immortal Yuan stone, Tong Hua did not want to do that for now, because she did not know the market price. This was the first time such a new thing was put on the market. Tong Hua did not know how much it was worth. However, she was looking forward to it. Thus, she rejected Fong Yuan without hesitation. If this light shine fungi became popular in jewel yellow skies, wouldn't she be making a loss by selling it at this price? But if the price was too high, the other party would not trade. It would be better to sell it to jewel yellow skies directly. Since Tong Hua did not want to sell it, Fong Yuan was helpless. But he could understand. A brand new desolate plant could be sold at a high price. Even though this world's economy was not developed, goo immortals were smart. They knew how to drive up prices. Especially this light shine fungus. Tong Hua was the only one in the world. If it were Fong Yuan, he would also take advantage of the golden period at the start to raise the price and make a huge profit. After all, light shine fungi were only rank 6 desolate plants. As time passed, someone would find them or research them. Tong Hua's monopoly would be broken. After all, Eastern Sea was huge. Light shine fungi would not only grow in one place. Goo immortals could use the light shine fungi to research a method to search for them. That way, the number of light shine fungi would increase greatly. Seeing that no one wanted to trade with her, Tong Hua walked down. Immediately, a second goo immortal took her place, walking up the stage. This was the rule of the trading convention. In each round, the goo immortals would go up in a certain order. Each time, they could only trade the same type of resources. That way, it would be fairer. As for Fong Yuan, this newcomer who had just joined, he also had the chance to participate in the transactions and take the initiative to trade, but he could only be in last place. This is a marrow absorption rock, a rank 7 immortal material. I want to trade for 1,000-year drifting wood. The goo immortal on the stage spoke concisely, expressing his intentions. As soon as he finished speaking, he displayed his goods in front of everyone. This marrow-sucking stone was completely black, and it looked no different from an ordinary reef by the sea. But in truth, any living being with bones that got close to it would have their bone marrow sucked into the rock. Thus, marrow absorption rocks were also known as demonic stones. The name demon stone came from the mermaids. Mermen were a type of variant humans. Most of the mermen in the world lived in Eastern Sea. Mermen lived at the bottom of the sea. They could breathe freely. They had suffered from marrow absorption rocks. They feared them and called them demonic stones. In Eastern Sea's history, some merman tribes even worshipped demonic stones like gods. But to goo immortals, this marrow absorption rock was just an immortal material. This transaction was also successful. Even though 1,000-year drifting wood was rare in the market, the goo immortals who participated in this trading convention were all wealthy. Otherwise, they would not have gathered here. Birds of a feather flocked together. The goo immortals who could get along with Miao Ming Shun were naturally extraordinary. One could say, this small-scale trading convention was a rare gathering of experts in Eastern Sea's goo immortal world. After the second goo immortal got off the stage, all walked up. I have an ancient desolate beast queen mother toad. It can command rank 6 and below giant toads. If nurtured properly, it can even produce enslavement path immortal goo. Are you interested? The Queen Mother Toad had a lot of enslavement path marks. But 220's transaction ended in failure. The fourth goo immortal went up. I want to find clues about Chi-Si. Who knows how to find Chi-Si and enter it? I am willing to pay a high price for relevant information. Information was part of the transaction, but the goo immortals present did not speak. This transaction also ended in failure. The Sea of Chi was a very special and mysterious part of the East Sea. Maybe none of the goo immortals present knew about it, or maybe some did, but did not want to trade it. The Gu immortals took turns to go up. The first round was about to end. Fang Yuan was last, and Miao Ming Shun was second last. He walked up the stage. I have a rank 7 divination tortoiseshell immortal Gu. Who is willing to make this transaction? Fang Yuan heard this and his eyes brightened. Chapter 1305. The trading convention was still ongoing. As the organizer of this trading convention, Miao Ming Shun was supposed to be the last person to go up on the stage. But because of the newcomer Fang Yuan became the last person. This caused Miao Ming Shun to be the second last person to go up on the stage. From Fang Yuan's point of view, he could see Miao Ming Shun's interpersonal skills. The trading convention naturally benefited the Gu immortals who were at the top. Miao Ming Shun took the initiative to be the last person to express his goodwill to all the Gu immortals. But he did not arrange for Fang Yuan to be in front of him. This was because of the rules. The newcomer had to be the last. If this rule was violated, people would feel disgusted. This time, Miao Ming Shun was the organizer, but what about next time? The so-called interpersonal skills were nothing much. It was just having a sense of propriety when interacting with people. Miao Ming Shun had a good grasp of this. He made people who interacted with him have a good impression of him. However, right now, Fang Yuan's mind was not on Miao Ming Shun. He was looking at the immortal Gu in Miao Ming Shun's hand with a bright gaze. Rank 7. Divination Tortoiseshell Gu. Fang Yuan's heart thumped. Why? Because Fang Yuan had many methods that could not be exposed easily. For example, Ancient Sword Dragon Transformation or Reverse Flow Protection Seal. Once these methods were used, unless Fang Yuan killed them in time, more information would be exposed. Gu immortals might even find out more of his secrets. He would be left with no way out. Speaking of which, it was quite awkward. Fang Yuan's strength continued to grow, but the trouble he caused was also getting bigger. Shadow Sect, Celestial Court, Longevity Heaven. Looking at his opponents and enemies, which one of them was not a giant force? Recently, he had even offended old ancestor Xuehu. That was the number 1 rank 8 in Northern Plains. Thus, Fang Yuan faced huge pressure. He had not reached rank 9 yet. Only by cultivating to the 9th revolution could Fang Yuan openly announce his identity, and no one in the world would be able to stop him. Before reaching rank 9, even if Fang Yuan cultivated to rank 8, Celestial Court, Longevity Heaven, and others could find trouble with Fang Yuan. Currently, Fang Yuan, who had rank 7 cultivation level, needed to keep a low profile and disguise himself, cultivating and accumulating strength. When I disguise as Wu Yi Hai, I have a weakness, or rather, a flaw. Fang Yuan could not fight while disguised as Wu Yi Hai, because he was not the real Wu Yi Hai. After soul-searching Wu Yi Hai, Fang Yuan knew that Wu Yi Hai had 3 transformation killer moves. One was in the form of a coral, one was in the form of a seagull, and the third was in the form of a turtle. Previously, when they fought in the regional wall, Wu Yi Hai had turned into a turtle to defend. Fang Yuan remembered clearly that it was a horned god turtle. Ancient desolate beasts had tough shells. They were among the top 10 ancient desolate beasts in Eastern Sea. Actually, this could be seen from Wu Yi Hai's Immortal Aperture Blessed Land. Wu Yi Hai's Immortal Aperture Blessed Land was an ocean. There were 3 types of life forms in it. First were corals, which had a large number of ancient, desolate plant silent corals. Second were seagulls, which had the desolate beast white letter blue feather seagull. Third were turtles, which had the ancient, desolate beast horned divine turtle. As transformation path Gu immortals, they would often raise some transformation-related life forms. Firstly, these life forms could be considered resources. They could be used to cultivate transformation path. For example, Wu Yi Hai's horned divine turtles cultivated this transformation. If he needed any immortal Gu in the future, he could kill these horned divine turtles and refine them. Secondly, for transformation path Gu immortals to raise their battle strength, they needed to have a clear and deep understanding of these life forms. By raising them in their immortal aperture, they could observe them and simulate them. After the transformation, they would be able to pass off as real. Their battle strength would increase. As for Fang Yuan, he was an exception. Fang Yuan's transformation path attainment level rose rapidly through dream realms and tribulations. Once attainment level rose, it would affect all aspects of cultivation. including this aspect. Thus, Fang Yuan could save himself from the tedious and time-consuming process of observation and practice. If I could have such an immortal goo, it would be very useful to me. The more Fang Yuan thought about it, the more he was moved. This divination tortoise was a wisdom path ancient, desolate beast. It had an ability to defend against deductions. Many goo immortals wanted to capture this ancient, desolate beast, but it was very difficult to use wisdom path to deduce its location. If Fang Yuan could transform into a divination tortoise, it would be very helpful to him when he traveled. To sum it up, this immortal goo could only be described as practical to Fang Yuan. To add a few more words, it would be too practical. To others, rank 7 divination tortoise immortal goo might be of little value. After all, it was only used to protect one's back. If it had an additional advantage of being able to defend against deductions, it would not be very effective. It would be inferior to other methods. Thus, it was not widely used. Moreover, would ordinary goo immortals make deductions for no reason? Do you think everyone is like Lu Guan Yi? Fang Yuan was different. Fang Yuan attracted the most attention. His infamy spread throughout the 5 regions. Even his disguise was the same. Furthermore, Fang Yuan could transform into a complete divination tortoise. Using transformation path Dao marks, that would be an immortal killer move. The ability to defend against deductions was much stronger than a single divination tortoise immortal goo. Fang Yuan looked at the surrounding immortals. What reassured him was that these people did not seem to be very interested in this immortal goo. Transactions of immortal goo had always been trading goo for goo. This was because immortal goo were unique. Their value was hard to determine. The value of immortal goo depended on the situation. Some people would rather give up on the same immortal goo. They felt it was a burden. After all, feeding immortal goo required a huge price. Others, however, tried all sorts of methods to pursue it. They would not give up. Once they succeeded, it would be like obtaining a priceless treasure. Immortal goo. To think that there would be an exchange of immortal goo in the first round. The goo immortals sighed. They discussed softly, but they sat in their seats without moving. Miao Mingshan smiled. In fact, he had already expected this situation. Among the goo immortals here, there were few transformation path. Only Chu Ying seemed to be. But even if there were, Chu Ying might not like this immortal goo. Transformation path goo immortals often cultivated 2 or 3 transformations. They would not bite off more than they could chew. Unless they obtained one of the essences of transformation path, change form immortal goo, they could not change their form at will. But Miao Mingshan had his reasons for doing this. This trading convention was organized by him after all. If news of an immortal goo exchange in the first round got out, it would make the trading convention even more interesting. More goo immortals with deeper foundations would be attracted to participate. I am willing to exchange for this immortal goo. Fang Yuan slowly stood up from his seat. At once, the immortals turned around and looked at Fang Yuan with slight surprise. Miao Mingshan was slightly dazed before reacting. He smiled brightly. I wonder what friend Miao Mingshan wants to exchange for? Fang Yuan asked. Miao Mingshan chuckled. Chu Ying, this is the first time you are attending the trading convention, and I am indebted to you. How about this? Actually, I do not need this immortal goo. I can exchange for anything. This time, it was Fang Yuan's turn to be dazed. He did not expect Miao Mingshan's conditions to be so lenient. But even so, immortal goo transactions could only be exchanged for immortal goo. Other things could not be used. Fang Yuan thought about it. I have flying bear strength immortal goo, yes? Before Fang Yuan finished speaking, Miao Mingshan said without hesitation. Fang Yuan assessed Miao Mingshan again. He thought, no wonder this person was doing so well in Eastern Sea's goo immortal world. He was a lone cultivator, but he had several goo immortals around him who were loyal to him. But there were some things that Fang Yuan had to make clear. A wry smile appeared on his face. I admire fellow immortal's heart. But I have not finished. My flying bear strength immortal goo is only rank 6. Miao Mingshan's expression changed. The immortals on the seats also had grim expressions. Some of them looked at Fang Yuan with dark gazes. Flying bear strength was a strength path immortal goo. Divination tortoise shell immortal goo was a transformation path immortal goo. Strength path was declining, but transformation path was flourishing. Between the two, Flying Bear strength was weaker than divination tortoise shell immortal goo. But now, Flying Bear strength was only rank 6. How could a rank 6 immortal goo compare to a rank 7 immortal goo? Chapter 1306. The difficulty of refining a rank 6 immortal goo was completely different from refining a rank 7 immortal goo. Fang Yuan wanted to use a mere rank 6 immortal goo, Flying Bear strength, to exchange for the rank 7 divination tortoise shell immortal goo. To put it nicely, it was wishful thinking, but to put it bluntly, he was greedy and trying to take advantage of others. This taking advantage had a hint of disdain in it. What did they think Miao Ming Shan was? Did they think he was easy to bully? Or did they think everyone else was stupid? Thus, it was understandable that the Gu immortals had dark expressions. Fang Yuan, however, smiled. He could see the immortals' attitudes and expressions. He was well aware of the changes in their mentality. But he still asked, I wonder if friend Miao Ming Shan is willing to trade? Miao Ming Shan smiled. It was a forced smile, but he still nodded. Yes, I am indebted to you. You helped me twice. These are enough. The other Gu immortals heard this and looked at Miao Ming Shan in a new light. They even expressed disgust towards Fang Yuan. One of them even snorted coldly, expressing deep dissatisfaction towards Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan laughed loudly. He continued, Everyone says that Lord Miao Ming Shan is so and so. I had my suspicions, but after trying it out today, my suspicions disappeared. How can I take advantage of you like this? I will use something else to make up for the difference. It will definitely satisfy you. Saying so, Fang Yuan transmitted to Miao Ming Shan secretly. After Miao Ming Shan heard this, his expression changed. He said excitedly, Chuing, is this true? Haha, won't you know if it is true or not after we complete this transaction? Fang Yuan smiled again. Sorry, we need to complete this transaction alone. Miao Ming Shan said as Fang Yuan followed him out of the cave. After going outside and completing the transaction, the two of them returned with smiles on their faces. Fang Yuan was relaxed, while Miao Ming Shan's smile showed satisfaction. Everyone could tell that the relationship between the two of them had advanced by leaps and bounds when the two of them held hands and swam together. Before sitting down, Miao Ming Shan bowed to Fang Yuan and said, I did not want to owe you a third favor. Fellow immortal's demeanor is truly admirable. This is just a transaction, not a favor. Fang Yuan was very polite. This conversation made the other Gu immortals even more puzzled. For a moment, everyone was secretly guessing. What kind of bargaining chip did this Chuing offer to make up for the difference in price so easily and make fellow immortal Miao Ming make such a statement? Miao Ming Shan sat down, but Fang Yuan did not. After this transaction was completed, it was Fang Yuan's turn, so he directly walked up to the platform. The gazes of the immortals below silently changed as they looked at him. They became solemn, and there was even a hint of curiosity and probing. At the same time, they were quite interested in what exactly Fang Yuan wanted to exchange for. This was because they did not know much about Fang Yuan. He was a complete stranger. According to the contents of Fang Yuan's transaction, the Gu immortals could deduce some information about him. For example, there were a lot of immortal materials that were produced in the Gu immortals' blessed land. This way, they could deduce some information, like how developed Fang Yuan's immortal aperture was, or which types of Dao marks were denser in the immortal aperture. If there were one or two corpses of ancient desolate beasts, they would be the Gu immortal spoils of battle. After all, if the ancient desolate beasts in the immortal aperture died, their corpses would not be so damaged. From these corpses, the immortals could deduce Fang Yuan's battle strength. Gu immortals had a lot of importance in collecting information. In this aspect, information path Gu immortals had the greatest advantage. But what Fang Yuan took out shocked the immortals. Everyone, please take a look. This is a rank 6 bone path immortal Gu. It is called Bone Spike. I obtained it by accident. Unfortunately, I am not a bone path Gu immortal. I will trade it now. Which Gu immortal is interested in this Gu? As for what to trade for, I am the same as Lord Miao Ming Shan. I do not have many ideas. Fang Yuan smiled. It is another immortal Gu. This is only the first round, but there are already 2 transactions of immortal Gu. This Chuing is quite wealthy. He is a transformation path Gu immortal, but has 2 other immortal Gu. The first transaction is done. However, This time, it was uncertain. Are there any bone path goo immortals here? The goo immortals discussed among themselves. They were familiar with each other. No. Fang Yuan waited for a while, but no goo immortal spoke. But he was not disappointed. Just the rank 7 immortal goo divination tortoise shell that he obtained was enough for him to participate in this transaction convention. Right when Fang Yuan was about to leave, a voice resounded. Wait, I think I can trade this immortal goo. The immortals quickly looked towards the source of the voice. It was Wu Ma Yang. Strange. He is a dark path goo immortal. Why does he want to trade for a bone path immortal goo? This question lingered in the minds of the immortals. Bone spike immortal goo naturally had little to do with dark path. But if Wu Ma Yang had some immortal killer move that needed bone spike immortal goo as a supplement, it was not impossible for him to buy this immortal goo. Everyone had their own secrets. Even though the goo immortals were curious, they restrained their thoughts and watched quietly. There is actually a goo immortal who wants bone spike immortal goo? Fang Yuan was curious too. He asked, I wonder what you want to trade for? Wu Ma Yang frowned. He hesitated for a while before gritting his teeth. I will use this immortal goo. He displayed his immortal goo. This was also a rank 6 immortal goo. It was the same rank as bone spike immortal goo. The immortals looked at it. Someone immediately shouted, This is immortal goo day? Indeed, this was rank 6 time path goo. Fang Yuan was stunned. To think that I was right to come to this trading convention. Fang Yuan cheered internally, but he did not show it on the surface. He seemed to be in deep thought. There was no need to think. The moment Fang Yuan saw this immortal goo, he wanted to trade for it. Why? Because he inherited He Fan's true inheritance. He had rank 7 year goo. After immortal goo, years flow like water, and a large number of time path immortal killer moves. He remembered that in the true inheritance, He Fan was constantly thinking about immortal level day goo and month goo. He kept talking about it. He also remembered the 4 immortal killer moves that were similar to days past like years. If the inheritor can obtain immortal level day goo or immortal level moon goo, then these 4 killer moves would not need to use so many mortal level day goo and moon goo, and the effect of the killer moves would also increase by a lot. These were the words in He Fan's true inheritance. Fang Yuan had seen this before, but did not think much about it. He was not greedy. He was already satisfied with year goo. But this was the wondrous thing about fate. When Fang Yuan did not have any hopes of finding immortal level day goo and month goo, day goo appeared in front of him. Then let's trade. Even though I do not know much about time path, feeding bone spike immortal goo is indeed a burden. Fang Yuan said, My day goo can draw water from the river of time. There is no need to worry about feeding it. But I cannot use this immortal goo. Why don't I trade this bone spike immortal goo? It can be used in my other killer moves. Wu Ma Yang said. The two exchanged on the spot. The wills and the 2 immortal goo retreated slowly, allowing the other party's immortal essence to infiltrate them. Immortal essence contained the goo immortal's will. This was the key to goo refinement. To goo worms, using an analogy from Earth, willpower was like a preset program. Wills could think. Wild goo worms had their own wills. Refining wild immortal goo was to use the goo immortal's will and immortal essence to get rid of the wild wills. Wild wills focused on survival. They did not know how to self-destruct. Thus, even though it was difficult for goo immortals to refine wild immortal goo, the risk was not high. Other people's immortal goo were different. A goo immortal's will was very different from wild wills. If one tried to refine other people's immortal goo directly, the immortal goo would self-destruct. It was like when Fang Yuan planted the special will in his immortal goo. He only needed to summon it, and it would return to him. Almost all goo immortals would not allow their immortal goo to be refined by others. Once that happened, the immortal goo's will would forcefully self-destruct. Unless wisdom path methods were used to suppress the immortal goo's will. But often, it was hard to suppress them all at once. If anything went wrong, the immortal goo would self-destruct. Precisely because of this, even though Fang Yuan captured He Cheng, he did not obtain his immortal goo dark arrow. Chapter 1307. This time's trade fair is very different. That's right, it can be said to be different. In the past trading conventions, even though immortal goo were traded, they rarely appeared in the first round. Immortal goo were hard to trade. Each member had limited opportunities in the trading convention. Thus, they would often move some transactions that were unlikely to succeed to the end. Thus, even if they wanted to trade their immortal goo, the goo immortals would choose to do it in the last few rounds. This was the norm in trading conventions. However, this time's trade fair was clearly different. Not only did immortal goo trade occur in the first round, it happened twice. And most importantly, they succeeded both times. In these two transactions, Fang Yuan played an important role. Even though this was his first time participating in the trading convention, the goo immortals present could not underestimate this newcomer, Chu Ying. Next, we will begin the second round, Fairy Tong Hua, Miao Ming-shun said. He was very happy. The trading convention had just started, and there was already an immortal goo trade. This result would be a great help to him when he roamed Eastern Sea's goo immortal world in the future. Tong Hua walked onto the stage. She wanted to trade for another desolate beast. It seems that she wants to develop her blessed land on a large scale, Fang Yuan said to Miao Ming-shun, who was sitting beside him. Miao Ming-shun smiled. Brother Chu, you might not know, but Fairy Tong Hua has just passed a tribulation recently. So that's it. Fang Yuan understood immediately. After a goo immortal passes a tribulation, a lot of resources would be lost in the immortal aperture, but the Dao marks would also increase by a lot. These new Dao marks would change the environment of the immortal aperture, making it more abundant and able to contain different species. Thus, the female immortal Tong Hua would trade for all sorts of resources in this trading convention. She wanted to raise them in her immortal aperture. This female immortal Tong Hua has a lot of wealth. Not only is her immortal aperture developed, she even has a private sea area, called Rainbow Aurora Sea. Every day at dawn or dusk, the sea would shine with rainbow light. It would be a beautiful sight to behold. This sea area is nearby. It is not far away. After this trade fair ended, Tong Hua would definitely invite everyone present to her place to have a seat. Brother Chu, you can come with me then. Miao Ming-shun transmitted, giving out some information about Tong Hua. Fang Yuan had a deeper understanding of her. Thank you for your recommendation, fellow Taoist Miao Ming. To tell you the truth, I'm quite interested in the light shine fungus in her hands, Fang Yuan said bluntly. No problem. I can be the middleman for you, Brother Chu. Miao Ming-shun immediately understood what Chu Li was trying to say and took on the responsibility. Ever since he transacted the immortal goo with Fang Yuan, their relationship had improved greatly. Fang Yuan was well aware of the change in Miao Ming-shun's attitude. The reason was none other than lifespan goo. To be able to move Miao Ming-shun, lifespan goo was truly worthy of its name. Fang Yuan only had a rank 6 immortal goo. He exchanged for Miao Ming-shun's rank 7 immortal goo, and the former was a weakened strength path immortal goo. Miao Ming-shun was very satisfied after the transaction. This was because Fang Yuan used 100 years of lifespan goo to make up for the difference. Although lifespan goo was immortal goo, it was very rare. Many goo immortals would keep it in their hands after obtaining it. They would not trade it unless they had no other choice. They would keep it as a trump card, planning to use it when their lifespan ran out. Even though Miao Ming-shun's lifespan was not at its end, he did not have much left. Precisely so, he tried all sorts of ways to find a tributary of the river of time and use some secret method to extend his lifespan. In the 500 years of Fang Yuan's previous life, Miao Ming-shun had entered the Blue Dragon Whale many times to search for the lifespan goo. Fang Yuan sent lifespan goo to him. How could Miao Ming-shun not be happy? Especially when Fang Yuan took out 100 years of lifespan goo as a bargaining chip. What did this mean? Miao Ming-shun was not stupid. He immediately thought. This meant that Chu Ying definitely had other lifespan goo in his hands. Otherwise, why would he not cherish them? Thus, Miao Ming-shun wanted to build a good relationship with Fang Yuan. But he did not know that this was what Fang Yuan wanted to see. Fang Yuan's scheme was much bigger. Blue Dragon Whale. With his previous life's information, Fang Yuan was much more familiar with this immortal opportunity than the current Miao Ming-shun. The transactions continued. In the second round, goo immortals appeared one by one. Most of the transactions were successful. Soon, it was Fang Yuan's turn. Woman's Heart Immortal Goo. Fang Yuan was about to display this rank 6 immortal goo and sell it, but his expression suddenly changed. Sorry, There was an unexpected situation. Everyone, I will be leaving first, Fang Yuan said directly. The Gu immortals were slightly surprised. This trading convention was a rare opportunity. To think that Fang Yuan would give it up like this. But the trading convention was free to enter and leave. It was fine if Fang Yuan wanted to leave. The immortals could not stop him. What's going on? Do you need my help? Miao Ming Shun took the initiative to send Fang Yuan off. It is not a big matter, but it is urgent. It is a pity that I missed the trading convention. Fang Yuan sighed. Miao Ming Shun quickly consoled. Don't worry, if there are such trading conventions in the future, I will inform Brother Chu. Thank you, Brother Miao. Goodbye. We will meet again. Fang Yuan flew away. His figure flew into the clouds and vanished. Miao Ming Shun sighed. Seeing that Fang Yuan had vanished, he turned around and went to the underground cave. Flying in the clouds, Fang Yuan's expression was not so good. The reason why he left was because a wisdom path great expert came to deduce his location. His dark limits effect was almost depleted. This caused him to expend even more energy. Fang Yuan had no choice but to stop participating in this trading convention and leave. Damn it, I wonder which Gu immortal is trying to deduce me? I wonder if he is deducing Fang Yuan or Lu Guanyi. Fang Yuan felt regret. If he had more time, he might even be able to trade woman's heart immortal Gu. Such an opportunity was hard to come by. After a transaction, many Gu immortals would lay low for several years before they would trade again. After getting to a safe distance, Fang Yuan activated the divination tortoiseshell immortal Gu that he had just obtained. Of course, he also used change form immortal Gu. Immortal killer move, divination tortoise transformation. Transformation path killer moves had always been this simple and crude. Because he lacked some mortal Gu worms, this killer move's effect was not outstanding. However, because he had change form immortal Gu, and because Fang Yuan did not need divination tortoise transformation to provide him with battle strength, he could barely use it. Divination tortoise transformation bought more time for Fang Yuan. A moment later, he chose a safe environment and placed his immortal aperture. For the next few days, he stayed in his immortal aperture. He started to think about how to refine attitude Gu. Although he had exchanged for 2 immortal Gu, they did not seem to have much use in refining attitude Gu. Fang Yuan was helpless about this. Maybe the third woman's heart could be exchanged for a suitable immortal Gu. But Fang Yuan had already lost this chance. He had to wait in his immortal aperture for a long time to use Dark Limit Immortal Gu again. Looking at the time, he had definitely missed the trading convention. In this case, I can only borrow immortal Gu from Langya Blessed Land. Fang Yuan had a backup plan. But this was only a secondary plan. The best situation was for Fang Yuan to complete it alone. Borrowing immortal Gu was not a problem. If Fang Yuan relied on his own immortal Gu to create an immortal killer move and refine attitude Gu, it would be of great help to him in the future. He could even fuse this immortal killer move into reverse flow protection seal. Imagine, by then, reverse flow river would surround Fang Yuan. Any immortal Gu that flew into the river would be refined by Fang Yuan. How tempting would that be? Fang Yuan had a long-term vision in this aspect. Unfortunately, even though he participated in the trading convention, he did not make any progress in this aspect. But thankfully, Langya Blessed Land had no lack of refinement path immortal Gu. Fang Yuan used Jewel Yellow Skies to transport them, expending Langya sect contribution points to rent several immortal Gu. This time, there was an unavoidable commotion in Jewel Yellow Skies. But Fang Yuan had no choice but to do this. Using these refinement path immortal Gu, Fang Yuan could barely come up with an immortal killer move that could be used with reverse flow river to refine attitude Gu. Fang Yuan purposely delayed his journey, and finally succeeded in refining attitude Gu after half a month. At this point, he finally had this legendary rank 8 immortal Gu in his hands. BZ, I've been in a slump recently. Chapter 1308. Central Continent, Hidden Dragon Cave. We pay respects to the upper immortals of Celestial Court. 2 Gu immortals knelt on the ground. They were an old man and a young man, grandfather and grandson. They were Gu immortals of Wind Cloud Manor. The young Gu immortal was Feng Chanzi, while the old man was Old Man Bei Feng. He had rank 8 cultivation level. He was famous among the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. If nothing unexpected happened, he would have already become a member of Celestial Court. After all, it was not easy to become a member of Celestial Court. It was not normal. Rank 8 cultivation level was far from enough. One had to be an elite among rank 8s. This standard had never been lowered since the establishment of Celestial Court. Celestial Court did not waver. They would rather have nothing than a shoddy product. But now, this old man Bei Feng was almost prostrating himself on the ground to express his respect. The only person worthy of his respect was an extremely weak and shaky old man who looked like he could be blown away by a gust of wind. But this old man was not ordinary. He had a huge origin. He had a huge influence in the history of Celestial Court. He was Duke Long. "Get up, bring me to the cave," Duke Long said plainly.
"Yes."
Old man Bei Feng replied. A moment later, Duke Long arrived at the deepest part of Hidden Dragon Cave. This was a huge and deep earth trench. It was bigger than the earth trench controlled by Northern Plains Zombie Alliance. Hundreds or thousands of cities could easily fit inside. It was more than enough. Duke Long and Old Man Bei Feng were tiny compared to this earth trench. From their point of view, the entire earth trench was shrouded in a deep layer of darkness. This darkness was so deep that it was impossible to see what was actually going on inside. Rumble. Suddenly, the entire earth trench experienced an intense earthquake. On the walls of the earth trench, countless rocks fell down. The huge sound waves created by the earthquake were deafening. People could not help but feel fear. Old man Bei Feng's expression changed. He quickly activated the immortal goo in his immortal aperture. Immediately, there was a bright light everywhere. Countless lights and flowing water interweaved together. It turned out that there was a huge super goo formation here. Compared to this goo formation, the Southern Border Goo Immortals Dream Realm Goo formation was like a kitten beside an elephant. Old man Bei Feng controlled the goo formation. His expression soon changed. Cold sweat covered his forehead. The commotion this time is so huge. He was a Grand Rank 8 Goo Immortal, but he was having a hard time now. The Super Goo formation was suppressing a terrifying life form. Even Old Man Bei Feng could barely deal with it. He. It seems that after so many years, you are still so energetic. Di Zongsheng, Duke Long said calmly. Roar. In the next moment, a dragon's roar resounded through the sky and shook the entire trench. The multicolored light of the Super Goo formation dissipated. Water splashed everywhere. Old man Bei Feng's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He thought, this is even with the isolation of the Super Goo formation. It is still so loud. If we were to face this evil dragon directly, it would be... Duke Long did not mind. He commented plainly. It seems that your temper has not changed. You are still so violent. Damn old man. This time, a human voice came from the goo formation. The voice was also deafening. At the next moment, a huge dragon head appeared from the multicolored light. It was evil dragon Di Zongsheng. This immemorial desolate beast had a huge origin. It was Central Continent's earth veins that were formed from countless emotions of hatred, anger, curses, and grudges, forming a legend. It was born from heaven and earth, because it was formed from the negative emotions of humans. Ever since it was formed, it had intelligence that was not inferior to humans. Initially, it could only roar like a dragon, but after learning, it used Hope Goo to awaken its aperture and learn human language. For a period of time, it even turned into a human and learned Goo immortal techniques. For a period of time, it wreaked havoc in Central Continent, causing the people to have no way to live. The world was turned upside down. But eventually, it was suppressed by Duke Long. This suppression lasted for countless years. But the Celestial Court could not kill it, because it was formed from the negative emotions of humans. As long as the human race was prosperous, the evil dragon would continue to grow stronger. Even if this body was completely destroyed, not even a speck of ash would be left. But soon, it would form on other earth veins and continue to cause chaos. Thus, the Celestial Court set up a Super Goo formation to suppress this evil dragon. The Watchman changed. This time, Feng Chanzi sold immortal materials for personal gains. He was sent to Hidden Dragon Cave as a watchman. His grandfather knew that Feng Chanzi did not have the ability, so he gave up on the chance to enter the celestial court and came here to watch over the evil dragon. After the evil dragon saw Duke Long, it acted out of character and became extremely furious. When enemies met, their eyes were filled with hatred. What are you shouting for? No matter how loud you shout, you cannot escape from this prison. Duke Long had a plain expression. Di Zongxing heard this and stopped shouting. He laughed. Ha ha ha, I almost forgot. Damn old man, you are really going to die. You are at the end of your lifespan. You only have one last chance to live. Even lifespan goo cannot be used. Haha, this is hilarious. Even though you suppressed me. So what? I am still alive. You won't be able to live for long. Duke Long nodded lightly. You are right. Sometimes, I really envy a life like yours. You're born with longevity, so you have to live forever. This time, I'm afraid it's the last time we see each other. Let me borrow 10 more years of lifespan from you. As he said that, Duke Long breathed in lightly. Old man Bei Feng was shocked to find that as one of the guards, he had lost control of the goo formation at this moment. Di Zongxing was suppressed by Duke Long. This super goo formation was also created by Duke Long. Duke Long was the true owner of this goo formation. Roar! Di Zongxing screamed in pain. Duke Long was still breathing. Old man Bei Feng could not tell what Duke Long was breathing in. It was as if an invisible life essence was forcefully extracted from Di Zongxing's body before being absorbed into Duke Long's body. So this super goo formation is not just suppressing Di Zongxing, it has such an effect. Old man Bei Feng realized. In the process of absorbing Duke Long's body, which was originally thin like a stick of wood, inflated like a balloon, his originally sallow and haggard complexion quickly dissipated, turning into a healthy and bright color. Her pale hair had turned black and shiny. His hunched back and frail bones let out creaking sounds as he straightened his back and held his head high. The most obvious change was the pair of coral dragon horns on his forehead. They were originally dispirited like 2 lumps of flesh, but now they were purple gold in color, piercing the sky. Bam! The aura of rank 8 peak stage was like a formless wall that spread out. Old man Bei Feng could not help but take a step back. Looking at Duke Long's majestic figure, shock flashed in his eyes. In stark contrast to Duke Long was evil dragon Di Zongxing. It spoke in a hoarse voice. Damn old man, you only have 10 years of lifespan left. Just treat it as me taking a dump on you. Ha ha ha. It was still laughing, but its laughter was very weak. Duke Long clenched his fists, saying nonchalantly, Evil dragon, you might not understand, but why would I, the great Duke Long, be afraid of death? I woke up this time to make up for my past sins, and these 10 years of lifespan are enough. Enough for what? What do you want? Evil dragon asked. What else? The great era is coming. Duke Long said with deep meaning. Great era? Great era. Don't tell me the earth veins are fusing, the regional walls will vanish, the 5 regions will become one. Wait, damn old man. Don't leave, explain it to me. Di Zongxing shouted, but Duke Long smiled coldly. Why would he care about the shouts of a prisoner? He turned around and left, swaggering off, leaving the hidden dragon cave without any reluctance to leave. Southern border. In a nameless place. River water was flowing. There was a tributary of the river of time here. Ing Wuxie and the rest had been waiting by the river for a long time. A figure appeared in the tributary of the river of time, staggering. Quick, let's move together and welcome Lord. Ing Wuxie saw this and shouted. He Lulan and Bai Ningbing beside him moved at the same time, activating the goo formation. Under the effect of the goo formation, Zishan Makoto got out of the tributary of the river of time. He was like a drowning person. He crawled to the shore with much difficulty, breathing heavily. His body was soaked in water. He was in a pathetic state. This Zishan Makoto actually entered the river of time and returned safely. Bai Ningbing was expressionless, but her heart was shaken. Lord, did you succeed? Seeing that Zishan Makoto's breathing had calmed down, Ing Wuxie quickly asked. Purple Mountain True Monarch nodded. When I entered the Red Lotus, I already communicated with that intent. The benefits I gained far exceeded my expectations. Is that so? Ing Wuxie was overjoyed. But Zishan Makoto had a grim expression. I used Red Lotus True Inheritance to observe the past and the future. Before Feng Yuan's rebirth, our shadow sect had already succeeded. We delayed the Great Era for 500 years. We exterminated Great Dream Immortal Venerable who had yet to mature. We even wanted to completely control Celestial Court. Unfortunately, Feng Yuan's rebirth changed everything. Shadow Sect no longer has the ability. The Great Era is about to descend. Ing Wuxie's expression was naturally shaken. Bai Ningbing and He Lulan looked at each other in bewilderment. The former asked coldly, "What is the Great Era?" Ing Wuxie breathed in deeply, answering, "The earth veins fuse, the regional walls vanish, the 5 regions become one, and Great Dream Immortal Venerable. This is the Great Era." Bai Ningbing and He Lulan were also stunned. At the same time, Feng Yuan entered southern border using Wu Yihai's appearance. Wu clan's headquarters were already in sight. I'm finally back. This time, I must absorb the dream realms and raise my attainment levels with all my strength. There is still time. Chapter 1309. Southern Border, Wu Clan. Feng Yuan used the appearance of Wu Yihai. After stepping into southern border, he returned to Wu Clan's headquarters. Knowing of his arrival, Wu Clan's current first supreme elder, Wu Yong, immediately summoned him. "Brother, these are the immortal goo that I borrowed from the clan. I am returning them." Feng Yuan handed the immortal goo over with both hands. Wu Yong received it, sitting at the main seat. He smiled. "Brother, did you have a smooth trip to Eastern Sea?" Every goo immortal had their own secrets, especially for someone like Wu Yihai. Wu Yong could not pry too much into Feng Yuan. Most of the questions were just pleasantries. My gains were not small. Feng Yuan showed a trace of joy on his face. He even sighed a little. His expression was very genuine. That's good. Wu Yong nodded. He would never have thought that Feng Yuan's gains would be so bountiful. After leaving southern border, Feng Yuan chased after Shadow Sect's remnant forces. Even though he did not achieve his goal, his gains were huge. Feng Yuan not only obtained Perseverance Immortal Goo and became the Reverse Flow River Lord. His battle strength soared to the point that even rank 8 Goo Immortals could not deal with him. Lu Guanyi's name shook the 5 regions. Furthermore, on the way back, he even participated in a high-level trading convention in Eastern Sea. He exchanged for Divination, Tortoise Shell, Immortal Goo, and rank 6-day Goo. Thank you for your concern, brother. When will I return to the Goo formation to continue cultivating? Please arrange it for me. Feng Yuan said again. His tone and attitude were very humble. Wu Yong was very satisfied with Feng Yuan's performance. These last days, he had been in charge of Wu Clan. Because Feng Yuan took the initiative to step down, Wu Clan's internal obstacles were greatly reduced. He managed to control everything and gain authority. At this moment, Wu Yong had already undergone a subtle change compared to when he had just ascended to the throne. He was more composed and dignified. He gave off a feeling of authority and inviolability. Naturally, Wu Yong was gratified that Feng Yuan knew how to adapt to circumstances. The system of a clan was different from that of a sect. It focused more on bloodlines. Wu Yihai's identity made him special among Wu Clan Goo Immortals. Purely in terms of bloodline, Feng Yuan was second only to one person and above tens of thousands. Since Wu Yihai wanted to cultivate in seclusion, Wu Yong had to help him. Immediately, Wu Yong agreed. Younger brother, you should return to your residence and rest for the time being. I'll make the arrangements right away. I'll definitely have something in the next few days. Thank you, elder brother. Little brother will take his leave. Feng Yuan saw that his goal had been achieved and immediately withdrew. He also had a residence in the Wu clan. When he just joined the Wu clan, he was allocated a mountain peak for Feng Yuan to reside in alone. This Wu Yong has already taken initial control of the Wu clan. Wu Yihai's identity is very sensitive. If he colludes with an ambitious clan like Chao clan and causes trouble, it will be a huge headache for Wu Yong. Thus, for the sake of safety, Wu Yong will not let Wu Yihai roam around and build up his reputation. Other Wu Clan Goo Immortals could do it, but Wu Yihai could not. At least not for the time being. After all, Wu Duxiu had just died. Even though Wu Yong was in control of Wu clan, it was not stable yet. Fang Yuan was very clear about Wu clan's situation. He was not worried that he would not be able to return to the Supergu formation. In the days on the mountain, he continued to cultivate, but he could not leave his immortal aperture, not to mention opening his immortal aperture's entrance to absorb heaven and earth chi. My sovereign immortal aperture's foundation is too strong. Every time it absorbs heaven and earth chi from the outside world, there is a huge change. It creates gales and clouds. The commotion is too huge, but reverse flow river expends a lot of heaven and earth chi. It seems that even if I return to Etion Mountain, I will need to absorb heaven and earth chi from the outside world to replenish it, to maintain the sovereign immortal aperture's foundation. This was a burden, but it was a sweet one. Even though Wu Yong told him to rest, Fang Yuan did not rest. He continued to cultivate. It was a race against time. During this period, many Clan Gu immortals came to visit Wu Yihai, who had a special identity, but Fang Yuan rejected them all. This attitude and style made Wu Yong very satisfied. He felt that Wu Yihai did not want to get involved in the clan's internal affairs. Thus, he personally gave Fang Yuan many immortal materials. Not only was it a show of goodwill and rewards, he even gained the reputation of caring for his brother. At the peak of the mountain, in a spacious hall, Fang Yuan had already turned into a giant tortoise. This tortoise was as large as a house. Its body was dark and eerie. Its back was thick and hard. There were tens of thousands of markings on its shell. It was a dazzling sight, but also orderly. It was a divination tortoise. This ancient desolate beast was a wisdom path beast. After transforming, all of Fang Yuan's transformation path Dao marks turned into wisdom path. Adding on his previous wisdom path Dao mark accumulation, it reached a huge quantitative change. With such a foundation, when Fang Yuan used wisdom path methods to make deductions, his efficiency rose sharply. He was several times faster than before, sometimes even more than 10 times faster. It was a simple divination tortoise-shell immortal Gu. In terms of Gu worms, it could not compare to Attitude Gu and Wisdom Sword Gu. Even Sword Escape, Flying Sword, Dragon Breath, and other Gu paled in comparison. However, for Fang Yuan, it was extremely useful. Suddenly, a bright light flashed in the eyes of the divination tortoise. After tens of days of hard work, I finally succeeded in deducing divination tortoise transformation. Fang Yuan willed and returned to human form. Next, he tried to activate the complete divination tortoise transformation killer move. Once, twice, thrice. After a dozen or so attempts, he continued to make subtle adjustments and finally succeeded. A brand new divination tortoise transformation. He added a large number of transformation path mortal Gu, like tortoise head Gu, tortoise tail Gu, tortoise feet Gu, and others. There were also some wisdom path Gu worms that increased the innate ability of divination tortoise's defense against deductions to the limit of Fang Yuan's abilities. There were also many defensive Gu worms. Of course, there were only 2 cores. One was rank 7 divination tortoise shell immortal Gu. The other was change form immortal Gu. The brand new divination tortoise was much larger than before. It was extremely lifelike, as if it was an ancient, desolate beast divination tortoise. Especially the tortoise back mountain, there were over 100,000 Dao marks crisscrossing together. Not bad. I have reached the limit of my current abilities. Fang Yuan experimented and was very satisfied. This was thanks to his Grandmaster attainment level in Wisdom Path and Transformation Path. Deducing these killer moves was as natural as eating and drinking. Similar to the ancient Sword Dragon transformation, Transformation Path was fused with Sword Path. This divination tortoise transformation was a combination of Transformation Path and Wisdom Path. At this point, Fang Yuan had a new method. The previous incomplete and hasty version could not be brought to the table, but this one could be used. Most importantly, when Ancient Sword Dragon, Reverse Flow Protection Seal, and myriad self-killer moves could not be used casually, this divination tortoise transformation was very timely and solved Fang Yuan's urgent problem. Fang Yuan stopped the transformation and rested for a while, recovering his mind. He closed his eyes and pondered, his consciousness entering the sovereign immortal aperture. Landscape as before. The rank 6 immortal Gu was activated. aiming at reverse flow river in his immortal aperture. Red date immortal essence was expended intensely, under the effect of landscape as before immortal goo. Reverse flow river slowly gained water. The efficiency is too low. Fang Yuan sighed. This was not his first experiment. The result was very disappointing. Landscape as before immortal goo had an effect on reverse flow river, but the effect was not obvious. This was a clear contrast to Dang Hun Mountain and Luopa Valley. Why did I use landscape as before to restore Dang Hun Mountain and Luopa Valley? But why is it so useless on reverse flow river? Fang Yuan was puzzled. Was reverse flow river more special than the two secluded domains of heaven and earth? Or was there another reason? If he could repair reverse flow river immediately, that would be wonderful. Reverse flow river's water could be used endlessly. But the truth was far from Fang Yuan's expectations. Wait, Dang Hun Mountain and Luopa Valley were once in the hands of Spectral Soul Demon Venerable. And Spectral Soul Demon Venerable created sovereign immortal fetus goo. Maybe these two secluded domains of heaven and earth have already been modified by Shadow Sect, just like how He Lulan and the others could use immortal goo of other paths without being restricted by Dao marks. Fang Yuan suddenly had a flash of inspiration. His guess was very accurate. Shadow Sect not only had recipes for goo immortals, they could let goo immortals cultivate other paths without conflicting Dao marks. They even had recipes for modifying secluded domains of heaven and earth, allowing them to be extremely effective against immortal goo of other paths. They would not be restricted by Dao marks. For Dang Hun Mountain and Luopa Valley, if they used time path immortal goo, they would not be restricted by the countless soul path Dao marks in the valley. This was because landscape as before and man as before belonged to Shadow Sect to begin with. Later, Zishan Makoto gave them to Tai Bai Yunsheng. As for reverse flow river, Shadow Sect did not obtain it. They were not interested in this river. Thus, reverse flow river did not receive any modifications. When Fang Yuan used landscape as before immortal goo on the river, he was weakened by the vast number of Dao marks in the river. The effect was very low. And this was after Fang Yuan became the reverse flow river lord. Otherwise, landscape as before goo's effect would be reflected by the river. Reverse flow river's water has been weakened by a lot because of the rank 8 existence. But thankfully, it is repairing itself, just that the speed is very slow. Can I use reverse flow protection seal to resist the immemorial year beasts? Fang Yuan quickly shook his head. Using reverse flow river, he could only protect himself. If the immemorial year beasts wanted to destroy his immortal aperture, he could do nothing about it. The reason why Fang Yuan thought of this was because of that sealed rank 8 immortal goo years flow like water. Unfortunately, even though his battle strength rose rapidly, Fang Yuan had not found the time to unseal years flow like water. Like this, Fang Yuan cultivated quietly, waiting for Wu Yong's arrangements to let him return to the giant dream realm. Chapter 1310. Southern Border, Wu Clan. In the hall, not only were there Fang Yuan and Wu Yong, there was also another goo immortal. He was tall. He wore a black and white cloak. His beard was smooth and extended to his chest. His eyes were long and narrow. They were shining with divine light. His body was covered in water vapor. Wu Clan's goo immortal Wu Yubo was arrogant. He had rank 7 cultivation level and peak battle strength. He was only slightly weaker than old Treeman Bada. Goo immortal Yin Huang challenged Uncle Yu. But the truth is that Xia Clan wants Moon Bowl. This place produces moon path goo worms. It is one of the most important production areas of my clan. We cannot lose it. Wu Yong said. With me here, First Supreme Elder does not need to worry. I defeated Yin Huang twice. I can defeat him a third time. Wu Yubo said coldly. Moon Bowl was not a bowl. It was a valley. But this valley had a peculiar shape. It looked like a huge bowl. It produced a large number of moon path goo worms. People called it Moon Bowl. There used to be a fort in the moon-worshipping bowl. When the Wu family expanded, they eradicated this mountain village in order to take over the moon-worshipping bowl. In the village, there was a goo immortal called Immortal Yin Huang. Wu clan sent Wu Yubo to defeat him. Immortal Yin Huang was inferior. He could only run away with tears in his eyes, abandoning his former home. As a righteous path member, Wu clan had a reason to take over Moon Bowl, but they could not kill immortal Yin Huang directly. This was the rule of the righteous path. Immortal Yin Huang left with hatred. In order to take revenge, he concealed his identity and cultivated his killer move, but he still lost to Wu Yubo the second time. Wu clan knew of his whereabouts. They knew that he was an enemy of their clan. They gathered Gu immortals and secretly chased after immortal Yin Huang. At the crucial moment, immortal Yin Huang was saved by an unknown force. Wu clan wanted to pursue the matter, but at that time, Wu Duxiu died. Wu clan was in chaos. Wu Yong became the leader. The political situation was in chaos. This gave immortal Yin Huang a chance to catch his breath. But now, a few days ago, immortal Yin Huang sent a challenge letter. He wanted to use Moon Bowl as a bargaining chip to challenge Wu Yubo. The Lunar Greeting Bowl would belong to whoever emerged victorious. The Wu clan was the #1 superpower in the southern border. How could they not accept it? However, what worried Wu Yong was that this time around, immortal Yin Huang did not come alone like the previous 2 times. Instead, he had sought refuge with a superpower, the Xia family. Because of this, the mysterious force that helped immortal Yin Huang before was obvious. It must be the Xia clan. On the surface, this was immortal Yin Huang challenging Wu Yubo. However, on the inside, it was of great significance. It concerned the struggle between the 2 superpowers. This news had already spread. It immediately attracted the attention of Southern Border's large forces and Gu immortal experts. After Wu Duxiu's death, although the Wu clan still had the reputation of being the #1 faction, its power was greatly reduced. The Xia clan was undoubtedly the first to challenge the Wu clan's authority. If the Wu clan was defeated in this battle, it would definitely allow the other clans to see through the Wu clan's weakness. By then, the hearts of the people would waver, and there would definitely be more and more operations against the Wu clan. This was what Wu Yong was worried about. This time, immortal Yin Huang publicly challenged them. It was the first obstacle that Wu Yong faced after gaining authority. Yubo, don't be careless. You should know that this matter has great significance to our clan. Wu Yong sighed. That Yin Huang joined Xia clan. He has the support of a super force, and now that he is challenging us, he definitely has ill intentions. He is well prepared. First Supreme Elder, just listen to my good news. Wu Yubo still had an indifferent expression. He glanced at Feng Yuan and said, in my opinion, there is no need for anyone else to hold the fort. It is just Yin Huang, a defeated opponent. He will definitely be captured. It is better to play it safe. My brother is proficient in 3 transformations. He is a rank 7 expert. With him holding the fort, I can be assured. Wu Yong replied. Wu clan's influence was too huge. Even though they had many Gu immortals, they were scattered everywhere. There were not enough of them. Originally, Wu Yong had planned to send Feng Yuan to the Super Gu formation. But now that this happened, Wu Yong sent Feng Yuan to hold the fort for Wu Yubo. After all, immortal Yin Huang was not alone this time. Xia clan's Gu immortal Xia Qingcong was with him. Feng Yuan joined Wu clan. Even though he could avoid it, it was not a big deal if he participated. Feng Yuan agreed. This was a good job. He only needed to hold the fort. After the matter was over, the clan would record his contributions. Even though Wu Yubo did not care, since Wu Yong insisted, he could not object. This matter was decided. Several days later, Wu Yubo and Feng Yuan arrived at the meeting place. Xia Qingcong and immortal Yin Huang were already waiting there. Immortal Yin Huang was a middle-aged Gu immortal. He had an ordinary appearance and had an old face. After seeing Wu Yubo, his expression changed. His eyes opened wide like they were about to spew fire. Xia Qingcong, on the other hand, had an extraordinary aura. His body was tall and straight like a mountain. His face was simple and fanging. His hair and beard were all white. Especially his beard. It was hard like needles. His eyes shined brightly. It was hard to look at him directly. Wu Yubo, you destroyed my village and killed my descendants. I will return all the humiliation I suffered to you today. Immortal Yin Huang shouted. Wu Yubo smiled coldly. You are slandering me. The reason I did this was to investigate the traces of blood path, to uphold justice and get rid of evil for the people. You are not a righteous person, yet you accuse an innocent person. You deserve death. The two fought without saying a word. Feng Yuan and Xia Qingcong stood at 2 ends of the battlefield. holding the fort for their respective Gu immortals. There was nothing much to say. Everyone knew the true reason. But when the righteous path did things, they had to put on a facade. Immortal Yin Huang cultivated fire and earth. His hand was covered in fire. It was like a dragon that burned intensely. His other hand was earth path. Rocks were rolling. It was a grand sight. And Wu Yubo cultivated water path. His movements were like falling leaves. His cloak fluttered in the wind. He had a sense of carefree beauty. Around him, there was a dense water aura. It was drizzling like a cow's hair. However, it was able to cause immortal Yin Huang's flames and rolling stones to melt and collapse. Evidently, Wu Yubo had the upper hand. But the battle had just begun. Both sides were probing each other. Immortal Gu and immortal killer moves had not been used yet. Fang Yuan observed the battle while inspecting the surroundings. He was wary of Xia Qingcang, preventing him from making any sneak attacks. But Xia Qingcang was very relaxed. He looked at Fang Yuan from time to time. When Fang Yuan looked at him as well, he would nod and smile. This scene gave Fang Yuan a faint feeling of unease. Xia Qingcang was a wisdom path Gu immortal. He was famous in southern border. He was an important person. The battle continued. Both sides continued to use immortal Gu and immortal killer moves. Immortal Yin Huang was at a disadvantage. He was suppressed by Wu Yubo. The latter's advantage was becoming more and more obvious. Victory was about to be decided. Fang Yuan did not dare to be careless. If he failed his duty, he would be punished when he returned to the clan. Yin Huang, go and die. It is your honor to die under my signature killer move. Wu Yubo's killing intent was intense. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He activated his immortal killer move. Rain poured down. Dark clouds covered the sky. Cold winds howled. The three gathered and formed a spherical cage that trapped immortal Yin Huang. Immortal Yin Huang was trapped inside. He could not escape. He was in a desperate situation. He was about to die. Fang Yuan's gaze was fixed on Xia Qingcang, guarding against him. But Xia Qingcang had a smile on his face. He watched from the side. He had no intention of helping. Right at this time, immortal Yin Huang suddenly laughed loudly. The aura of countless Gu worms burst out from his body. A blazing light spread out from his body. At once, the spherical cage that trapped him was dissolved. How can this be? Wu Yubo was shocked. He was caught off guard. His signature killer move was broken. He was heavily injured. The lava under immortal Yin Huang's feet interweaved. It quickly turned into a battlefield. This was an immortal battlefield killer move. Wu Yubo's face was pale. He was trapped in the battlefield. The situation changed. Wu Yubo was in danger. The situation changed. Fang Yuan was about to make a move, but Xia Qingcang flew close and warned, Wu Yihai, don't bring shame to Wu clan. Fang Yuan chuckled. How can an outsider like you care if my Wu clan is shamed or not? Saying so, he turned into a divination tortoise and charged towards the lava battlefield. Xia Qingcang praised Fang Yuan's decisiveness. He did not slow down. In that case, have a taste of my killer move, mind scattering. Wisdom Path Immortal Killer Move. Xia Qingcang immediately used his signature killer move. It was a powerful method. Gu immortals hit by this move would have their minds in chaos. They would have all sorts of thoughts. Their battle strength would be greatly affected. They might even fall into chaos and be unable to extricate themselves. Fang Yuan laughed heartily. He ignored it and charged towards the battlefield killer move. Fool, Xia Qingcang said coldly. At the next moment, his mind scattering hit Fang Yuan. But the result was that it dissipated while Fang Yuan was unscathed. Xia Qingcang's cold smile froze on his face. How can this be? This is divination tortoise? Xia Qingcang finally recognized the origin of Fang Yuan's transformation. He had a bitter expression. The divination tortoise was a wisdom path ancient, desolate beast. It could defend against the deductions of wisdom path Gu immortals. His wisdom path killer move was based on the concept of deductions, but it was countered by the divination tortoise. There was a deafening rumble. A hole was created in the battlefield killer move by Fang Yuan. The divination tortoise entered and saved Wu Yubo, who was in danger. Xia Qingcang was about to attack again when Fang Yuan spoke. Wu clan lost this battle. The battle ends here. Moon Bowl belongs to you. Hearing this, Xia Qingcang stopped attacking. Immortal Yin Huang wanted to attack again but was stopped by Xia Qingcang. The former could only watch with hatred as his greatest enemy escaped safely. Why did you let him go? Immortal Yin Huang shouted angrily. Xia Qingcang looked at him coldly. We have already won Moon Bowl. We have achieved our goal. It is not time for you to kill Wu Yubo yet. Don't forget, you are already an external supreme elder of Xia clan. You need to consider our clan's benefits first. Xia clan had already gotten the upper hand this time. If they forced it, Wu clan would definitely retaliate. Chapter 1311. Wu clan's rank 7 Gu Immortal Wu Yubo lost to Immortal Yin Huang. This matter was intentionally spread by Xia clan. The whole of southern borders Gu Immortal world soon learned of it. Everyone's hearts wavered. Wu Yubo is a rank 7 expert. Wu clan's famous battle strength. He actually lost to Immortal Yin Huang? Immortal Yin Huang had high battle strength to begin with. Now that he obtained Xia clan's help, it is not impossible for him to defeat Wu Yubo. Wu Yubo is a prideful person. It is strange that he lost to a loser this time. Most importantly, Immortal Yin Huang actually broke Wu Yubo's signature killer move. That is amazing. It was probably Xia clan's Xia Lu Pei who deduced it. Xia clan had a wisdom path Gu Immortal. He was one of the top deduction experts in southern borders Gu Immortal world. It was Xia Lu Pei. This time, Wu clan has lost too much face. Wu Yubo not only lost to Immortal Yin Huang, he almost lost his life. If not for Wu Yihai breaking the battlefield killer move, Wu Yubo might have lost his life. That can't be. It's true. All sorts of Gu worms have already spread. They show the scene from back then. Wu clan actually lost Moon Bowl because of this. Hee hee. What a joke. If we trace back to the source, Moon Bowl was snatched by Wu clan. This time, it is the Wu clan who deserves it. Haha. With Wu Du Xiu gone, Wu clan can no longer maintain their reputation as the #1 clan. Losing the Lunar Reverence Bowl wasn't considered a huge blow to the Wu clan, which had a huge business and a solid foundation. However, Fang Yuan took the initiative to break the battlefield killer move and save Wu Yubo. Wu clan fell into a passive situation. This was the difference between the righteous path and demonic path. Fang Yuan took action and saved Wu Yubo. He went against the rules of the competition. This competition was unfair. Wu clan lost face. And most importantly, there was evidence for this. They could not deny it. The one who helped Immortal Yin Huang was Xia clan's wisdom path Gu Immortal, Xia Qingcang. He did everything flawlessly. He had already used information path Immortal Gu to record the entire scene. Since they were targeting the Wu clan, the Xia clan had naturally made ample preparations. Wu clan had to admit this. After Fang Yuan brought Wu Yubo back, Wu Yong ordered for Fang Yuan to be punished. Because he broke the promise and interfered in the battle, he was punished to face the wall and receive a number of Xian Yuan stones. Fang Yuan had saved Wu Yubo. He had done a great deed. To Wu clan, they had lost face, but they had saved a rank 7 Gu Immortal. Comparing the two, the latter was naturally more important. Fang Yuan had contributed, but he was punished by Wu Yong instead. However, he didn't have any resentment in his heart. Instead, he pinched his nose and accepted the punishment. After returning to the Wu clan's headquarters, he hid in his residence on the mountain peak and didn't take a single step out. The Moon Bowl incident was still brewing, and its influence was still growing. Wu Yubo was a prideful person. After losing to Immortal Yin Huang, he was furious and embarrassed. Not long after he returned, he announced that he would go into closed cultivation to fight again in the future and regain his face. Even though Wu clan lost Moon Bowl Valley, and Wu Yong also punished Fang Yuan for breaking the rules, Wu clan's reputation fell because of this. And most importantly, Xia clan's actions brought inspiration to the other super forces. Righteous path was different from demonic path. The righteous path had its own rules. Xia clan made full use of this rule. Even though Wu clan lost Moon Bowl, they had nothing to say. Xia clan was quite special in southern border, and even in the 5 regions. Because this super force mainly cultivated light path and wisdom path. Even though wisdom path Gu Immortals were few in number, Xia clan had 4 to 5 wisdom path Gu Immortals, and many of them were experts. Among the wisdom path Gu Immortals in the whole of southern border, Xia clan was the #1 surname, they had a huge share. It was not strange that Wu clan was plotted against by Xia clan. The other forces saw Xia clan's success and became restless. They wanted to imitate them. When Wu Duxiu was alive, Wu clan was like the sun in the sky. They devoured other people's resources and expanded their territory. There were many incidents like Moon Bowl. There were also many enemies like Immortal Yanhuang. This was something that the other forces could use to deal with Wu clan. All sorts of information came. Wu Yong felt something amiss. A storm was coming towards Wu clan. Sure enough, after the Moon Bowl incident, Luo clan attacked Wu clan. Their reason was very legitimate, similar to Xia clan's. Next, Qi clan and Chai clan tried to get their hands on Wu clan's inspiration Silkworm Cave and Spring Sun Mountain Range. Wu Yong stayed at the center and mobilized his troops, but Wu clan's territory was too big. They lacked manpower. They could only maintain an undefeatable situation. Wu clan was in trouble. Wu Yong was in a terrible predicament, but as Wu Yong's younger brother, Wu Yihai, was living a comfortable life. Inside the sovereign immortal aperture. Let me go. Please let me go. Ma Hongyun's soul screamed in pain, but Fang Yuan ignored it. He continued to soul search. Ma Hongyun's soul could not bear such torture. It soon became extremely weak. Guts goo. Fang Yuan used a goo worm and healed Ma Hongyun's soul. He continued to soul search. You demon! Kill me! Kill me! The intense pain directly affecting his soul was unbearable for Ma Hongyun. He kept on cursing, scolding and crying for mercy, but Fang Yuan turned a deaf ear to him. After a while, he finally stopped. Ma Hongyun's soul had become extremely thin. It was like a lump of mist on the verge of vanishing. But at the next moment, Fang Yuan crushed a guts goo, healing Ma Hongyun's soul. I finally obtained all the luck path true inheritance that Ma Hongyun had memorized. But Zhao Lianyun is not dead. This Ma Hongyun's soul can still be captured and imprisoned. Hee. After Fang Yuan killed Ma Hongyun in Reverse Flow River, he obtained his soul. These last days, he had been soul-searching Ma Hongyun. After confirming that he had thoroughly searched Ma Hongyun, he no longer had any secrets to hide from him. Fang Yuan thus obtained a portion of all living beings' luck true inheritance. Self-luck, all living being luck, heaven and earth luck. These were the three true inheritances of Giant Sun Immortal. Self-luck true inheritance was in Langya Blessed Land. All living beings' luck true inheritance was in 88-point Jinyang Tower. Heaven and earth luck true inheritance was in Longevity Heaven. Following the destruction of Imperial Court Blessed Land in 88-point Jinyang Tower, the all living beings' luck true inheritance was destroyed as well. But back then, Ma Hongyun and Zhao Lianyun had obtained the protection of all living beings' luck true inheritance. They each obtained a portion of the true inheritance's contents. Along the way, after Fang Yuan's soul search succeeded, this portion of all living beings' luck true inheritance ended up in Fang Yuan's hands. Thankfully, old ancestor Shui, who wanted to refine fortune rivaling heaven immortal goo, he wanted a healthy Ma Hongyun, so he did not do anything to his soul. When Ma Hongyun left Imperial Court Blessed Land, he was captured by Shadow Sect's Qin Bai Sheng. The contents of the all living beings' luck true inheritance that he knew should also be known by Shadow Sect. Fang Yuan analyzed. In this portion of the true inheritance, the most valuable part was the recipe of fortune rivaling heaven immortal goo. Ma Hongyun happened to remember this portion of the true inheritance. This was the most important part of all living beings' luck true inheritance. But it was not strange. Precisely because Ma Hongyun knew this immortal goo recipe, after old ancestor Shui who bought him, he also learned about this immortal goo recipe. Thus old ancestor Shui who had the thought of refining fortune rivaling heaven immortal goo. Fortune rivaling heaven immortal goo. Fang Yuan smiled bitterly. According to the contents of this immortal goo recipe, even if he used all his wealth, he would not be able to gather even a tenth of the immortal goo recipe. Unless there was a living goo material like Ma Hongyun, who could save many precious goo refinement materials, Fang Yuan could barely see a trace of hope. How could Fang Yuan dare to refine fortune rivaling heaven immortal goo? This was a rank 8 immortal goo. What would happen if he rashly refined a rank 8 immortal goo? Old ancestor Shui whose outcome was clear. This rank 8 Goo immortal with the strongest battle strength in Northern Plains was definitely not having a good time now. Not only did he fail to refine fortune rivaling Heaven Immortal Goo, he even lost Reverse Flow River and Snowy Mountain Blessed Land. Even his beloved wife Lady Wan Shou was injured. Even though I have a lot of assets now, and the Sovereign Immortal Aperture's foundation is deep enough to compare to ordinary rank 8 Goo immortals. But I have little Immortal Yuan Stone and Red Date Immortal Essence. Most importantly, I have little surplus resources. This time, Feng Yuan chased after Wu Xie and the rest. From southern border to eastern sea, and then to northern plains, he expended a lot of Immortal Essence. Not to mention comprehending immortal killer moves in Reverse Flow River. Reverse Flow Protection Seal was the one that consumed the most Immortal Essence among all the immortal killer moves. The Sovereign Immortal Aperture originally had a lot of production, but because time was delayed and calamities and tribulations were delayed, the efficiency of resource production was greatly reduced. Even though I am still making profits, the expenditure is not small, especially in the aspect of feeding Immortal Goo. Wisdom Sword Immortal Goo and Attitude Immortal Goo are not resolved yet. I still need to invest in them. Feng Yuan had to solve the feeding problem and also store up Immortal Essence in case of emergencies. This caused his current situation to be quite awkward. Not long ago, because he broke the rules and saved Wu Bo, he was fined an Immortal Yuan Stone. It was like adding fuel to the fire. Delaying time caused the Immortal Aperture's time path resources to fall sharply. In this case, I can only expand production and win through quantity. However, I need to think carefully about what kind of resources to expand production. Some resources are already saturated in the market. If I expand production, I will only be shooting myself in the foot. Just as Feng Yuan was thinking about these problems, Wu Bo's will flew to his residence with an Immortal Goo. I will never forget the debt of saving my life. I will give this rank 6 Vajra Thought Immortal Goo to Lord Wu Hai as a token of my gratitude. Wu Bo's will had actually given an Immortal Goo to Feng Yuan. Vajra Thought Immortal Goo. Evidently, this was a Wisdom Path Immortal Goo. Feng Yuan had also benefited from the incident of Moon Bowl. He obtained an Immortal Goo. Even though it was rank 6, Immortal Goo were unique and priceless. Chapter 13:12. This Vajra Thought Immortal Goo was the size of a fist. It looked like glass, translucent and shining with golden light. It had a great appearance. Feng Yuan held it in his hands. It felt heavy, like he was holding a lump of solid gold. The exchange was smooth. The process was short. After Feng Yuan refined this Vajra Thought Immortal Goo, Wu Bo's will said goodbye to Feng Yuan and flew away. He obtained a rank 6 Immortal Goo just like that. But Feng Yuan was not surprised. He had made a contribution to Wu clan. Feng Yuan saved Wu Bo. It was a huge contribution to Wu clan. Even though he violated the rules and lost Wu clan's face, he saved a precious rank 7 battle strength expert for Wu clan. Evidently, his contribution was greater than his mistake. Even though Wu Yong punished Feng Yuan understood it well. This was the righteous path. They had to be presentable in public. Wu clan had to reward Feng Yuan, but Wu Yong could not show up. If Wu Yong showed up, the political significance would be completely different. Once he was found out, he would be attacked and criticized by others. Thus, Wu Bo's will showed up. This Vajra Thought Immortal Goo was Wu Bo's personal gratitude to Feng Yuan. It was actually Wu clan's expenditure. But there was a need for this. This was the righteous path's way of doing things. I got another Immortal Goo. Feng Yuan smiled bitterly. Maybe ordinary Goo immortals would be overjoyed, but to Feng Yuan, it was different. There were too many Immortal Goo. The burden was too heavy. However, Vajra Thought Immortal Goo is a Wisdom Path Immortal Goo. It came at the right time. It can make up for some of my shortcomings. Feng Yuan did not lack Wisdom Path attainment level. He only lacked Wisdom Path Immortal Goo. In the past, he only had Attitude Goo and Unravel Mystery Goo. But now, he had Affection Goo and Vajra Thought Goo. For Wisdom Path Immortal Goo, this was enough. With Feng Yuan's Wisdom Path Grandmaster attainment level, he would be able to do much. Feng Yuan injected Red Date Immortal Essence and tried to activate Vajra Thought Immortal Goo. Immediately, golden thoughts appeared in his mind. These thoughts were small and exquisite. flashing with a metallic luster, giving off a sturdy and solid feeling. As the thoughts collided, there seemed to be clanging sounds. Fang Yuan tried to use these newly generated Vajra thoughts to perform mental calculations. He quickly discovered that these Vajra thoughts were not good at thinking. It was very difficult for thoughts to fuse, and they would often collide with each other and shatter. Fang Yuan thought to himself, as expected. He wasn't surprised at all. Vajra thought immortal goo itself was not used for thinking. Its strength was in fighting. Fang Yuan mobilized these Vajra thoughts from his mind. These thoughts were originally small and exquisite, but once they left his mind and came to the outside world, they expanded and formed golden balls the size of a fist. Their surfaces flickered with a glass-like luster. Fang Yuan sat cross-legged on a cattail hassock. Hundreds of Vajra Psyche beads floated around him. For a moment, golden light shone brilliantly. As soon as he thought of this, one of the Vajra Psyche beads flew out. Shwa! It was extremely fast. Thoughts were very fast to begin with, especially in the mind. They were faster than light. When the Vajra Psyche beads were sent to the outside world, they were not as fast as in the mind, but they were still very fast. This speed is almost 50% of Sword Escape Immortal Goos. Fang Yuan's eyelids twitched. He was very satisfied with this speed. Sword Escape Immortal Goo was a rank 7 Immortal Goo with the best speed. Vajra Thought Immortal Goo was only rank 6, but its Vajra Thoughts had half the speed of Sword Escape Immortal Goo. Of course, for an Immortal Goo like Vajra Thought, even if it was raised to rank 7 or 8, the Vajra Thoughts produced would not have a qualitative change, but a quantitative change. Theoretically speaking, the Vajra Thought produced by Immortal Goo was no different from the Vajra Thought produced by Immortal Goo. The difference was in quantity. Rank 5 Mortal Goo Vajra Thought could produce 100 Vajra Thoughts at once, but Immortal Goo Vajra Thought could produce thousands, or even tens of thousands of thoughts in an instant. Then how powerful was one Vajra Thought? Fang Yuan aimed at a floor tile and shot out his Vajra Thought. With a soft sound, the Vajra Thought drew a dazzling golden light in the air. It pierced through the floor tile and went deep into the ground. Fang Yuan nodded. The power was not bad. The hall he was in was a Mortal Goo house. Its defense was nothing in the eyes of Goo Immortals, but it was not made of paper. Vajra Thought's power made Fang Yuan think of the bullets on Earth. However, it was much bigger than a bullet. Activating Vajra Thought Immortal Goo once can produce thousands of Vajra Thoughts. If so many thoughts are shot out at once, it would be a grand sight. Wait a moment. A flash of inspiration appeared in Fang Yuan's mind. He thought of two Goo Immortals. One was Dongfang Naganori, the other was Yilui Kun Xing. The former had an immortal killer move called Hataru. The latter also had an immortal killer move that used Stardust as the main body. The more he fought, the stronger he would become. I have Vajra Thought Immortal Goo now. Why don't I imitate Hataru and create an immortal killer move? Fang Yuan had a thought. His Wisdom Path Grandmaster attainment told him that this should not be difficult. Thus, Fang Yuan stopped activating Vajra Thought Immortal Goo. He calmed down and started to deduce this immortal killer move. The main thing was to imitate Hataru, using Vajra Thought Immortal Goo as the core. Sure enough, it went smoothly. The difficulty was low, just like Fang Yuan's intuition. Less than an hour later, this immortal killer move was already in its embryonic form. For a day and a night, Fang Yuan did not rest. He transformed into a divination tortoise and deduced, obtaining the complete immortal killer move. Fang Yuan did not name this new immortal killer move, because he had a new inspiration. This immortal killer move only uses rank 6 Vajra Thought Immortal Goo as the core. It does not have much power. Maybe I can combine it with Divination Tortoise Transformation and modify this immortal killer move, increasing its power. Fang Yuan felt that this modification was not simple. Even though he had Grandmaster Wisdom Path and Transformation Path attainment, combining the two was not something that could be done in one go. The speed of modification was extremely slow, but Fang Yuan was not in a hurry. Right now, the external environment was still peaceful. Even though Shadow Sect had not been exterminated, Celestial Court and Longevity Heaven were after him. But with the help of Dream Realms, Fang Yuan believed that his foundation would rise rapidly. Undeniably, with Reverse Flow Protection Seal, he was much more confident. 3 days later, there was not much progress in modifying the killer move. It was less than 30% complete. Wu Yong called someone over. He wanted to meet Wu Yihai. In the hall, after the two brothers chatted for a while, Wu Yong told Fang Yuan, if he was not satisfied with Vajrathought Immortal Goo, he could choose any rank 6 Immortal Goo from the clan's treasury and exchange them. It turned out that after Fang Yuan accepted Vajrathought Immortal Goo, Wu Yong did not make a move. He thought that Wu Yihai was a lone cultivator and did not understand the righteous path. He might have thought that this was Wu Yubo's token of gratitude. That would not do. Wu Yong called for Fang Yuan and reminded him that he could obtain Vajrathought Immortal Goo because of this elder brother of his. At the same time, he used the excuse of exchanging Goo to express his goodwill towards Wu Yihai. But he did not know that Fang Yuan already knew this. He was just pretending to be ignorant. It seems that Wu clan has been in a difficult situation recently. Their Goo immortals are lacking in strength. Wu Yong wants to make use of my strength. Fang Yuan immediately realized Wu Yong's intention. Fang Yuan naturally did not want to interfere in Wu clan's matters. But recently, many super forces had tacitly allied together to make trouble for Wu clan. Facing the storm, Wu Yong was somewhat tired from dealing with them. The giant dream realm was the same. Ba clan led some Goo immortals and made things difficult for Wu clan. Originally, Wu Yong wanted to swap Fang Yuan over there. But with Ba clan's actions, the Super Goo formation was facing huge pressure as well. To be safe, Wu Yong did not dare to change people at the last moment, causing Fang Yuan to be unable to move into the Super Goo formation. Thank you for your concern, elder brother. I also want to go to the treasury to gain some experience. Even though Fang Yuan had designed an immortal killer move for Vajrathought Immortal Goo, he did not want to exchange it, but it was good to take a look at the Immortal Goo in the treasury. Last time, he chose Immortal Goo from the clan's treasury. It was just the outer treasury. The Immortal Goo in the inner treasury were naturally of higher quality and value. Wu clan was the #1 force in southern border. Fang Yuan was looking forward to seeing what they had in the treasury. Chapter 13:13. Among them, there was an Immortal Goo named Rain. It was a rare information path rank 7 Immortal Goo. Fang Yuan was quite moved. After all, he was weak in the information path aspect. It restricted his development to a large extent. Name Rain Immortal Goo also had a special effect. After activating it, it could turn into a rain that could bind any desolate beast, desolate plant, or even ancient desolate beast or desolate plant. That's right, even though it was an information path Immortal Goo, it had an enslavement path effect. It was very special and mystical. What moved Fang Yuan the most was that this name Rain Immortal Goo's power varied according to the Goo Immortal's reputation. This was very suitable for Fang Yuan. Be it Fang Yuan's real name or Lu Guanyi's fake identity, they were both famous across the 5 regions and spread far and wide. Who was the most famous during this period of time? Other than Fang Yuan, who else could it be? But my information path attainment level is very ordinary. Even if I exchange for this name Rain Immortal Goo, what use would it be? Enslaving ancient desolate beasts and desolate plants is not very useful to me, unless I enslave immemorial desolate beasts. But with just a rank 7 name Rain Immortal Goo, it is impossible to enslave an immemorial desolate beast. The only possibility is to use it as the core to create an immortal killer move. If that is the case, it will be even more far-fetched. After all, my enslavement path and information path attainment levels are not a Grandmaster. As for immemorial desolate beasts and desolate plants, Grandmaster attainment level is not enough. Fang Yuan thought about it. He did not exchange for it. He kept Vajrathought Immortal Goo. This choice surprised Wu Yong. I made some gains after returning to Eastern Sea. From now on, Divination Tortoise Transformation will reflect Wisdom Path. It will be my main cultivation path. Fang Yuan explained. This was also a foreshadowing for him to continue using Divination Tortoise Transformation in the future. Wu Yong nodded. I called brother here. Other than this, I have another task? Fang Yuan had a calm expression. Please speak, brother. Wu Yong smiled bitterly. My tribe's Frosty Peak is being targeted by Xia clan. There were some historical reasons here. They were all in this information path Mortal Goo. I hope that brother can protect the Frosty Peak for our clan. I am willing to resolve brother's problems. Fang Yuan agreed and received this information path mortal Gu, inspecting it carefully. Fang Yuan's attitude made Wu Yong very satisfied. Fang Yuan looked through the information path Gu Worm's contents and immediately understood this matter. So after Immortal Yin Huang defeated Wu Yubo, Xia Clan obtained Moon Bowl Valley and became the biggest beneficiary. Following this, some superpowers also sought trouble with the Wu family. After the Xia clan tasted the sweetness and saw that the situation was like this, they wanted to continue to make a move and scheme against the Wu clan to obtain benefits for their own clan. This time, they targeted the Frosty Peak. Frosty Peak was not Wu clan's property. It belonged to a lone cultivator Gu Immortal. A long time ago, this itinerant immortal had sought help from the Wu clan. The Wu clan had taken a fancy to his territory, but the itinerant immortal wasn't willing to give it up. After a difficult negotiation, the itinerant immortal lent this place to Wu clan for hundreds of years. 100 years later, this itinerant immortal died from his tribulation. This Frosty Peak became Wu clan's property. It was produced in large amounts every year. The reason why Xia clan could cause trouble was because they found this itinerant immortal's descendant. The itinerant immortal's descendant wanted Wu clan to return Frosty Peak. This was completely reasonable. There was also evidence of this. The Xia clan was supporting them from behind, waving flags and shouting war cries. Their intentions were clear. They were plotting against the Moon Peak. The itinerant immortal's descendant is a Gu master. He actually dares to challenge Wu clan. Xia clan has many wisdom path Gu immortals. They are indeed good at scheming. But this time, I have to protect Frosty Peak. This is a good chance for me to display my strength. The reason why Wu Yong is not willing to send me to the Super Gu formation is because he is worried that I am not strong enough to suppress the situation there. Fang Yuan accepted the mission but was not in a hurry to leave. He thought to himself, even though he was strong, he had many methods that could not be exposed. Divination Tortoise Transformation was good for defense, but lacking in offense. Thankfully, he had Vajra Thought Immortal Gu. He needed to modify that Immortal Killer move first. Thus, for the next 10 days or so, Fang Yuan stayed in his mountain, deducing and modifying the Immortal Killer move. This half a month was not peaceful. Xia clan saw that Wu clan did not make a move. They urged and spread the news. Wu clan was facing huge pressure. Wu Yong also came to urge Fang Yuan but was stopped by Fang Yuan. No rush. If I do not show up, Xia clan cannot openly annex Frosty Peak. Xia clan is clamoring everywhere? It's nothing. No matter how much he changes, I will remain unmoved. Be steady. This is the principle of life that I comprehended when I was a secluded cultivator in Eastern Sea. Be slow. Slow work produces fine results. Fang Yuan gave a lot of reasons. He rejected them clearly. Eventually, even Wu Yong became anxious. Wu Yihai did not have much pressure, but as the leader of Wu clan, his pressure was increasing day by day. The clan's matters are my matters. Since you've entrusted this matter to me, I will definitely do it well. I won't disappoint the trust and expectations that you have placed on me. Fang Yuan was still stubborn. Wu Yong could do nothing about this. He had no Gu immortals to send. Only when Fang Yuan completely modified the Immortal Killer move and tested it a few times, after he was sure of success, did he set off for Frosty Peak. Wu Yong let out a sigh of relief. Xia clan had been paying close attention to Wu clan. The moment Fang Yuan left, they received news. On Frosty Peak, Wu clan sent Wu Yihai this time. Rank 6 Wisdom Path Gu Immortal Xia Zhuomo said, this Frosty Peak is comparable to Moon Bowl. Wu clan did not send Wu Yubo or Wu Zhen. This is a stupid move. Rank 7 Gu Immortal Xia Fei Kuai could not believe it. Xia Zhuomo pondered. Wu clan has no one to send. Wu Yubo is a prideful person. He lost to Immortal Yin Huang. Unless he can kill Immortal Yin Huang and avenge himself, he will not leave. As for Wu Zhen, he is guarding Phoenix Peak. How can he leave so easily? During this period of time, all sorts of phoenix birds go to Phoenix Peak to breed and lay eggs. Haha. Wu Yong had no choice but to send Wu Yihai. What is his battle strength? Xia Fei Kuai asked. Xia Zhuomo thought about it before replying. His battle strength is unknown. He had been cultivating in Eastern Sea before this. There is little information. But he was able to escape and return to Wu clan. He has the strength to protect himself. The most recent time, he saved Wu Bo. He used divination tortoise transformation. It was a lucky hit. Lord Xia Qing Tsang's scattered will killer move failed. Saying so, he smiled bitterly. Divination tortoises are naturally resistant to wisdom path methods against him. I might not be able to do much. I will have to rely on you, Lord. Xia Zhuimo was rank 6 wisdom path, while Xia Fei Kuai was rank 7 light path. The latter laughed heartily. This Wu Yihai took so long to move. It shows that he does not have much confidence. Don't worry, I will suppress this person this time and occupy Frosty Peak. We will expand our territory and gain merit for Xia Clan. Chapter 13-14. The sky was gloomy. It was drizzling. Fang Yuan was flying in the sky. He was surrounded by clouds and mist. I'm here. He willed as he descended. The clouds and mist faded away, revealing a vast land. Southern border had many mountains. The land below Fang Yuan was also covered in mountains. They were lush and green. In this deep green sea, Frosty Peak was unique. It was pure white and stood out from the rest. It was a stark contrast to the surroundings. At the peak of Frosty Peak, there was a mortal Gu house. At the entrance of the Gu house, Xia Clan's 2 Gu immortals, Xia Fei Kuai and Xia Zhuimo, had already sensed Fang Yuan's traces. Fang Yuan was here to negotiate. He naturally would not conceal himself. It was normal for Xia Clan's 2 Gu immortals to find him immediately. He is finally here. This Wu Yihai is really something. A journey that should have taken 2 to 3 days has taken him half a month. Xia Fei Kuai frowned. It's good that he is here. Let's welcome him. Xia Zhuimo smiled. The two sides met in the air. Both sides had smiles on their faces. They had elegant demeanors. After all, they were representing 2 super forces. Xia Clan's 2 Gu immortals assessed Wu Yihai, thinking, he really looks like Wu Duxiu. Fang Yuan was also assessing these 2 Gu immortals. Xia Fei Kuai was rank 7. He was evidently the leader of Xia Clan's side. According to Wu Clan's information, Xia Fei Kuai was like his name. He was impatient, decisive, and had strong battle strength. Xia Zhuimo was a wisdom path Gu immortal. He had many thoughts and liked to think. Xia Zhuimo's nature was related to his childhood experiences. Whenever he encountered an important matter, he would subconsciously think about opportunities and think about them repeatedly. Meanwhile, Xia Fei Kuai's nature was the aftereffect of cultivating a certain immortal killer move. This was the first time the two sides were meeting. As they conversed, Xia Clan's Gu immortals led Fang Yuan to the peak of Frosty Peak. Please come in. Please have some tea. These 2 Gu immortals acted like they were the masters. They seemed to be announcing the ownership of Frosty Peak. The battle had already begun, but Fang Yuan did not react. It was like he did not sense anything. He smiled as he sat down, sipping his tea. The tea is not bad, he praised after taking a sip. Xia Zhuimo smiled. This is my Xia Clan's 4 Seasons tea, personally made by my clan's grand elder. When he took a sip, there were 4 different tastes, making him feel as if he had arrived at the 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. That's why we call it 4 Seasons tea. Xia Clan's first supreme elder was a time path great expert. The 4 Seasons tea she refined showed her deep attainments in time path. Xia Clan's Gu immortals used this tea to establish their might. But after Fang Yuan drank it, he smiled brightly. What a great tea. I wonder if the 2 immortal friends from the Xia Clan have any left over? I'll be thick-skinned and ask for a few portions. How about that? Fang Yuan said with a smile. The 2 Xia Clan Gu immortals looked at each other. Xia Zhuimo thought, this Wu Yihai really knows how to speak. But even though they were enemies this time, the righteous path's demeanor was still important. Furthermore, the political situation was ever-changing. Today, everyone was making things difficult for the Wu clan, and it was possible that the Xia clan would cooperate with the Wu clan after tomorrow. Xia Zhuimo made up his mind and was about to speak when Xia Fei Kuai replied, Sigh. This is nothing. We have a lot of 4 Seasons tea. Since Wu Yihai wants it, take it. Saying so, he gave out more than 10 portions of 4 Seasons tea. Then I shall accept it. Fang Yuan laughed heartily, receiving the tea leaves. Xia Fei Kuai continued, let's talk about Frosty Peak. Fang Yuan slowly raised his cup and took a sip before putting it down, saying, Xia Fei Kuai, please speak. Xia Fei Kuai immediately spoke, his mouth opening and closing non-stop. It's a long story. Since everyone knows the reason, I will go straight to the point. Little Zhang, come out. The moment he said that, the door of the Gu house opened and a rank 5 Gu master walked out. Zhang Sanfeng's descendant, Zhang Kai Zue, greets the three immortals. This Gu master had white hair. He greeted the three Gu immortals in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. This little Zhang's bloodline is authentic, there's no doubt about it. Come, Wu Hai, please verify it. Xia Fei Kuai left his seat and walked to Zhang Kai Zue, grabbing his arm and bringing him in front of Fang Yuan, showing an impatient expression. Zhang Sanfeng was that lone cultivator Gu immortal from back then, the owner of Frosty Peak. Of course, Zhang Sanfeng was not his real name, it was a title. Because he had 3 mystical peaks, Frosty Peak was one of them. As for his real name, it could not be verified, because ever since he started cultivating, he had never revealed his full name, only saying that his surname was Zhang. Thus, people called him Zhang Sanfeng. Even his bloodline descendants did not know his full name and surname. Fang Yuan was well aware of this. Wu clan's intelligence was quite comprehensive. But now, he waved his hand and pretended to be confused. Wait, who is this Gu master? Xia Fei Kuai was stunned. Zhang Kai Zue was about to speak when Xia Fei Kuai spoke. Zhang Kai Zue. We all heard him introducing himself. I know it is Zhang Kai Zue. Fang Yuan nodded. Next, he paused and drank a mouthful of tea, continuing. But what does this mortal Gu master have to do with Frosty Peak? It is like this, his ancestor Zhang Sanfeng once. Xia Fei Kuai immediately answered. Wait. Fang Yuan waved his hand. Who is Zhang Sanfeng? Xia Fei Kuai was stunned again. Wu Hai, after all this time, you still don't know who Zhang Sanfeng is? Fang Yuan smiled embarrassedly. The clan asked me to negotiate and protect Frosty Peak, but I came in a hurry. I did not know the reason. Please don't take offense. Xia Fei Kuai thought. You came in a hurry, taking half a month to get here. This is called being in a hurry? Even though he thought so, he still spoke politely. Then I will tell you the reason. I'm all ears. Xia Fei Kuai's lips moved quickly again, almost leaving afterimages as he spoke at an extremely fast speed, explaining the entire history. Fang Yuan drank a mouthful of tea and nodded. Xia Fei Kuai, do you know the truth now? Fang Yuan put down his cup and stood up from his seat, greeting Xia Fei Kuai. Xia Fei Kuai did not understand why Fang Yuan was greeting him. He felt it was strange. But as a righteous path member, he had to maintain his composure. No matter what, he returned the greeting. Next, he saw Fang Yuan smile embarrassedly. Fang Yuan said, Thank you for explaining, but you spoke too quickly. I only heard the gist of it. I did not hear the rest. Please repeat yourself, fellow immortal. Repeat yourself? Xia Zhuemo, who was at the side, frowned. Xia Fei Kuai sighed, but did not repeat himself. He said, Wu Hai. What part of it did not sound good? Let me explain. Chapter 13:15. Fang Yuan acted as if he didn't notice, smiling as he said, First of all, I didn't hear the first sentence clearly. Xia Fei Kuai repeated it again. Fang Yuan nodded. Then the second sentence. Xia Fei Kuai raised his eyebrows. Fang Yuan continued. I didn't hear it clearly either. Xia Fei Kuai repeated it again, his tone very unhappy. Is there anything else that you didn't hear clearly? The third sentence. Fang Yuan said. Xia Fei Kuai's eyes instantly widened. He directly said, Forgive me for being blunt, but you didn't hear the third sentence clearly? Are you trying to make fun of me? You've really misunderstood. Fang Yuan hurriedly waved his hand. The third sentence. I did hear it clearly. Xia Zhuomo's expression darkened. Xia Fei Kuai raised his eyebrows high, his eyes widened, his face showing anger. Then what else do you have to say, Celestial? Fang Yuan said again. Really, the fourth sentence. Xia Fei Kuai waved his hand. Then I'll say it again. Listen carefully, listen clearly. So he really repeated it. This time, he spoke very slowly, word by word, very clearly. Fang Yuan stood up and bowed to Xia Fei Kuai. Xia Fei Kuai was confused. He had a bad feeling, so he hurriedly bowed back. His tone softened. Celestial friend should be clear about this, right? Clear, clear. I'll have to trouble Celestial friend to repeat it. I can't be clearer. Oh, so it's like this. Fang Yuan patted his forehead, then sat down again. So, it's a reasonable request for your side to return Moon Peak. My Xia clan also came to uphold justice. This Zhang Kaizui is the bloodline descendant of Zhang Sanfeng. Without a doubt, please verify it. Xia Fei Kuai made another request. But Fang Yuan only glanced at Zhang Kaizui, smiling as he waved his hand. No hurry, no hurry. Is there something that Celestial friend doesn't understand? Xia Fei Kuai's expression darkened, his tone unfriendly. I've troubled fellow immortal to explain so much, but is the actual situation like this? I'm not sure yet, Fang Yuan said. Xia Fei was so angry that he almost laughed. Everything I said is true. Fellow immortal, feel free to verify it. Haha. Fang Yuan also smiled and clapped his hands. Fellow immortal, you are a straightforward person. Then I will first seek confirmation from my clan. Saying so, he closed his eyes. His consciousness seemed to sink into his immortal aperture, using information path methods. The other three waited for a long time, but Fang Yuan did not open his eyes. Xia Fei Kuai could not help but urge, Immortal friend Wu Yihai, have you verified it yet? Fang Yuan opened his eyes and smiled embarrassedly. My elder brother is very busy and doesn't have time. Let's wait for a while. Regarding a rank 8 Gu Immortal, Xia Fei Kuai could not say anything. Xia Zhuemo interrupted. Lord Wu Yong has been very busy recently. He has no choice but to be busy. Wu Yihai, you can seek confirmation from other Wu clan Gu Immortals. Fang Yuan laughed heartily, giving Xia Zhuemo a thumbs up. As expected of a wisdom path Gu Immortal, good idea? This praise made Xia Zhuemo's expression freeze. Next, Fang Yuan said, but I am not familiar with other Gu Immortals. Does fellow immortal have any recommendations? Recommend your sister. Xia Fei Kuai, who was at the side, heard this and was instantly enraged as he blurted out, My sister? I only have an elder brother, but no younger sister. You must have remembered wrongly, right? Fang Yuan smiled with squinted eyes. Xia Fei Kuai was speechless. He and Xia Zhuemo looked at each other. They communicated secretly. They could tell that Fang Yuan was joking. To think that Wu clan sent such a person here. This is simply shameful. Xia Fei Kuai was filled with anger. He wanted to discuss things properly, but Fang Yuan did not. But because of his righteous path status, Xia Fei Kuai could not do anything out of line. Now that he looked at Fang Yuan's smiling face, he really wanted to punch him and beat Fang Yuan up. Don't be anxious, don't be angry. Once you are angry, you will fall into his trap. It seems that this person is an experienced negotiator. He is purposely provoking us and making us expose our flaws. Xia Zhuemo quickly persuaded. Xia Fei Kuai could only huff and puff a few times. Fang Yuan spoke, looking at Xia Fei Kuai with a serious expression. Do I really have a sister? Immortal friend Xia, please tell me. Xia Fei Kuai. He took a few deep breaths, and his Adam's apple bobbed up and down before he said, It was a slip of the tongue. Please forgive me. Oh, is that so? Fang Yuan nodded, saying in concern, I see that your mouth is dry and your chest is heaving up and down. It seems to be a sign of internal heat. Please drink some tea. It will help to lower your internal heat. Speaking of which, this Four Seasons tea is really good. Please drink some more. Xia Zhuemo. Xia Fei Kuai shouted. What are you drinking? We are talking about proper matters. Fang Yuan had a serious expression. Immortal friend's words are biased. What is proper matters? It concerns the health of the body and mind. Isn't it proper matters? The so-called frosty peak is just an external object, a resource. Immortal friend, you cannot get angry because of this external object. You will hurt yourself. His earnest and well-intentioned words of consolation were like adding oil to the fire. Xia Fei Kuai fiercely slammed his palm on the table. Wu Yihai, he shouted angrily. Don't think that you can bluff your way out of this and keep Frosty Peak in your Wu clan. Humph. Fang Yuan's expression changed. He said with sincerity, Immortal friend Xia Fei Kuai, what are you saying? You are really wronging me. The ownership of Frosty Peak, we have to follow the rules. This belongs to Zhang Sanfeng's wandering immortal. If this Zhang Kai Zue is his descendant, it naturally has to be returned. I am representing Wu clan this time. I will handle this impartially. I will not be corrupt and break the rules of the righteous path for personal gains. You are an understanding person. Xia Zhuemo smiled reluctantly. His words were filled with deep meaning. Xia Feiquai frowned. He stopped shouting and said, "That's why. Quickly verify that Zhang Kai Zue is Zhang Sanfeng's descendant. He is the real deal." No hurry, no hurry. Fang Yuan smiled as he started to drink his tea. Let me verify it from the clan first. It is not that I do not trust you, but I have a huge responsibility. I do not dare to make a rash decision. Then quickly verify it. Xia Fei Kuai shouted. Brother Wu Yong, there is no reply yet. Fang Yuan said with difficulty. Then someone else. Xia Fei Kuai shouted. Fang Yuan slapped his thigh. That's right. But I have just arrived. I'm not familiar with the other Gu immortals in the clan. I do not know who to verify it with. Earlier, I asked you to recommend someone, but you refused to do so. I am also in a difficult position. Once he said this, the two Xia clan Gu immortals were dumbfounded. They looked at each other. After all this time and all sorts of excuses, it turned out to be our Xia clan's problem instead. On the other side, the rank 5 Gu Master Zhang Kai Zue looked at Fang Yuan with wide-opened eyes. This was the demeanor of a Gu immortal? He was simply shameless to the extreme. Zhang Kai Zue had a feeling of amazement. His good impression of Gu immortals was completely shattered. All right, I can see it now. This person is clearly stalling for time. Xia Zhuomo transmitted. Why is he stalling for time? Xia Fei Kuai asked. Evidently, Wu clan is not in the right. They are in a passive situation. Wu Yihai is pestering them endlessly, stalling for time. When Wu clan gets over this crisis and comes to deal with us, we will be in trouble. Let alone anything else. After the phoenixes reproduce, Wu Zhan will have time to come here to negotiate. If he comes, the situation will be different. Xia Zhuomo analyzed. You are right. But what should we do? Wu Yihai is clearly stalling for time. But he is speaking in a righteous manner. We cannot find any reason to do so. If he wants to stall for time, he has many reasons. For example, he needs time to verify it, and after that, there is also a process to verify his identity. What happens after he verifies Zhang Kai Zue's identity? Would he bring up whether or not he was Zhang Sanfeng's only descendant? Xia Fei quickly realized the severity of the problem. There's really no end to these questions. Xia Fei quickly realized the seriousness of the problem. I have a plan, Xia Zhuomo said. What plan? Xia Fei Kuai quickly asked him. Chapter 1316. Spar? The word sounded grand, but it was just a small disagreement and they would fight. But this fight was different from demonic path battles. Demonic path battles were life and death battles. Righteous path Gu immortals often had huge businesses and clans. Why would they fight to the death for no reason? It was enough to decide who was superior. This was also because Fang Yuan was purposely stalling. He did not want the matter of Frosty Peak to be decided. Thus, Xia Clan's two Gu immortals decided to use their fists to resolve the situation. Actually, even on Earth, if negotiations failed, powerful countries would send their armies over. The essence was the same. Xia Fei Kuai's words were quite interesting. He represented Xia Clan and made Wu Yihai the glory of Wu Clan. He was saying that this spar was not just a fight between the two of them, it was also a fight between Xia Clan and Wu Clan. One sentence forced Fang Yuan into a dead end. If Fang Yuan avoided the battle, it would damage Wu Clan's reputation. In the righteous path, he would be looked down upon. What Xia Clan's two Gu immortals did not know was that Fang Yuan was not Wu Yihai. He did not care about Wu Clan's reputation. But then again, he was currently acting as Wu Yihai. He wanted to sneak into the Super Gu formation. Fang Yuan could not reject this challenge. He was silent for a while before saying, if it is a spar, with both of you working together against me, I will definitely lose in numbers. Xia Fei Kuai's expression changed. He could not say that. Actually, He was the one who suggested the spar. He was already in a passive position. If he lost this spar, he would be asking to be humiliated. If both Xia Clan Gu immortals fought and won, they would be bullying him with numbers. They would lose face, and it would not be good to spread the news. Actually, Xia Fei Kuai had never thought of working together with Xia Zhuomo, he said. I will fight alone, Wu Yihai. You don't have to worry. Fang Yuan's expression was very forced as he said, since your side wants to spar so urgently, it would not be good if I don't agree. But since it is a spar, there has to be a time limit. We can't fight until the end of the day, right? What rules do you have? Xia Fei Kuai asked. Sparring naturally had rules. It was different from a life and death battle. Fang Yuan said, you attack and I defend. As long as you can break my defense within 10 moves, I lose. Xia Fei Kuai's eyelids twitched. He said solemnly, okay. Xia Zhuomo frowned. He felt something was amiss. But since Xia Fei Kuai agreed, there was no harm. He had confidence in Xiazhua and Gu. Naturally, the Frosty Peak was not a place for the two sides to fight. It would not be good if it was damaged. Both parties flew out and chose a desolate valley. Fang Yuan and Xia Fei Kuai stood facing each other. Let's begin. Xia Fei Kuai could not wait. He wanted to teach Fang Yuan a lesson. Among the rank 7 Gu immortals of southern border, he was a famous expert. In Wu Clan, Wu Yong was a rank 8 Gu immortal. Wu Clan's strongest rank 7 Gu immortal, Wu Yubo, was only slightly stronger than him. Immortal Yin Huang defeated Wu Yubo. Xia Xia played it beautifully. In a real fight, Immortal Yin Huang was not Wu Yubo's match, but Xia Clan broke Wu Yubo's signature killer move. Wu Yubo was targeted. His immortal killer move was forced back. He suffered a huge backlash. Immortal Yin Huang won. Wait. Fang Yuan waved his hand. Xia Fei Kuai was about to attack, but Fang Yuan stopped him. He felt uncomfortable. He shouted, Wu Yihai, what do you want? I almost forgot. Since it is a spar, we can't just spar like this, right? Fang Yuan smiled. Xia Fei Kuai thought, how can it be so casual? Teaching you a lesson is the most important part of this battle. He thought, but he could not say it out loud. Gu immortals had all sorts of methods to record the current situation. Like earlier, when Immortal Yin Huang challenged Wu Yubo, it was recorded by Xia Clan Xia Qingcong. It was widely spread in southern borders Gu immortal world. Xia Fei Kuai controlled his anger. What do you want? It's very simple. If fellow immortal loses, this Frosty Peak will belong to us. If I win by luck, then the matter of Frosty Peak will remain the same. Fang Yuan said, how can that be? Xia Zhuomo, who was watching from afar, was anxious. He finally shouted before Xia Fei Kuai could. This time, Xia Clan was in control of Zhang Sanfeng's bloodline descendants. They had a huge advantage. Wu Clan was in a passive position. If they agreed to this, they would lose their advantage. It was not a wise move. Xia Fei Kuai pouted, thinking, I am not an idiot. At the same time, he rejected. This cannot be done. In that case, forgive me for not fighting. Let's forget about this spar. Fang Yuan waved his hand, turning around to leave. Xia Fei Kuai saw this and almost cursed it out loud. We left the Moon Peak and came here. After a lot of hard work, we carefully selected a valley where we could spar with each other. But with just one sentence from you, we stopped fighting? Are you playing with us? His expression turned dark. Wu Yihai retreated without a fight. Is this the glory and bravery of Wu Clan? Fang Yuan's footsteps stopped. Xia Fei Kuai smiled coldly. Fang Yuan turned around and faced Xia Fei Kuai, but his expression was solemn and serious without any shame. You are wrong. I have never avoided sparring. It is just that you did not agree to my small request. We cannot come to an agreement, but that does not mean I want to avoid sparring. Look, I have already chosen the location for the spar. Oh my, damn it. These words made Xia Zhuomo, who was watching, furious. Xia Fei Kuai stared with furious eyes. His hair was about to stand on end. He stared fixedly at Fang Yuan. How did Wu Clan produce such a shameless person? Didn't Wu Clan's Gu immortals fight each other whenever they had a disagreement? Where is your Wu Clan's bravery? Where is your Wu Clan's spirit? Where did it go? But soon, Xia Fei Kuai thought of Fang Yuan's birth. That's right, Wu Yihai was not a true Wu Clan Gu immortal. He was a secluded cultivator from Eastern Sea. This damned secluded cultivator. Fang Yuan smiled even more brightly. Since we cannot spar, we can chat and drink some tea. I have to say, your Four Seasons tea is really good. It leaves me with endless aftertastes. What tea? What chat? Xia Fei Kuai suddenly had an intense urge to strangle Fang Yuan to death. The anger in his chest was burning fiercely. Xia Zhuemo looked at Xia Fei Kuai with some resentment, thinking, it is all because Lord gave them a lot of tea when we met. Fang Yuan pondered. How about this, if I win, we will maintain the status quo for 5 years, and you will not harass Frosty Peak anymore. How about that? This. Xia Zhuemo started to ponder. Fang Yuan suddenly raised this condition. Compared to before, it was many times more relaxed. It did not seem so hard to accept. But Wu Yihai suddenly threw out this condition. He might have planned it. Xia Zhuemo was still thinking. Xia Fei Kuai spoke. All right, I agree. Xia Zhuemo was stunned, transmitting. Lord Xia Fei Kuai, are you going to let this son of a bitch stall for time again? I will bear the consequences of this. It has nothing to do with you. I cannot afford to waste my time. For this stupid matter, the less time I have to spend with this guy, the better. Xia Fei Kuai immediately rejected with a firm attitude. Xia Zhuemo smiled bitterly. If this spar fails, even if you, Xia Fei Kuai, bear the consequences, will I be able to escape responsibility? The clan sent me to assist you. Wasn't it to persuade you? Sigh. He heaved a deep sigh in his heart and helplessly transmitted his voiceover. Then I wish you victory in this battle, sir. Are you sure? Fang Yuan asked again. His condition, to Wu clan, was only delaying the problem. It did not solve it. But once 5 years passed, Fang Yuan should have finished what he needed to do. At that time, who would serve Wu clan? I am sure. This time, Xia Fei Kuai did not speak. Xia Zhuemo spoke. Good. Fang Yuan slowly flew back. His tone was very annoying. Actually, I do not want to spar. No matter what, it will hurt our relationship. But since Lord Xia Fei Kuai insists, then on account of the Four Seasons tea that you gave me, I will agree to this spar. Don't mention the tea, let's fight. Xia Fei Kuai shouted. His eyes were bloodshot. Before he finished, Fang Yuan's body glowed. He turned into a divination tortoise. Xia Fei Kuai was stunned. Fang Yuan was hesitant before, but now he was very straightforward. This surprised him for a moment. It's the divination tortoise again. Xia Zhuemo frowned. The divination tortoise was huge. Its 4 legs were like pillars. It stood firmly in the valley, filling up the entire valley. The whole divination tortoise was dark and eerie. There were countless markings on its shell. It was very eye-catching. Xia Zhuemo stared at it for a while before feeling dazzled. He quickly retracted his gaze. Xia Fei Kuai did not expect Fang Yuan to use an immortal killer move at once. Normally speaking, when Gu immortals spar, there was a process of probing. Fang Yuan skipped that and used his trump card. Looking at the sturdy tortoise's shell, one can imagine the divination tortoise's defensive strength. No wonder he suggested this spar. Thinking of this, Xia Zhuemo's frown deepened. What should I do? Xia Fei Kuai hesitated. He did not know what Wu Yihai was good at, but Fang Yuan knew. Xia Fei Kuai's hesitation was short. He attacked almost immediately. First move. He raised his hand and clenched his fist. He punched towards the divination tortoise in the valley. His fist shined with dazzling light. The pure white light left Xia Fei Kuai's fist in an instant, turning into a ball of light that was the size of steel wine, and smashed downwards. Immortal Gu auras and mortal Gu auras intertwined. Chapter 13:17. Xia Fei Kuai saw that Fang Yuan had used an immortal killer move. He could only use an immortal killer move to deal with it. The pure white ball of light was not fast. It did not have the advantage of agility of light path. But when it flew in the air, it pushed against the air, emitting a buzzing sound. Bam! The wine steel-sized ball of light smashed on the divination tortoise's back. It had the weight of a mountain. Fang Yuan's divination tortoise form was smashed into the ground. The huge divination tortoise's body sunk a foot into the ground. Xia Fei Kuai's move was indeed powerful. Light Path was known for its speed. But Xia Fei Kuai's Sky Essence attack was the complete opposite. It was like a heavy punch. As long as it hit, the huge force would catch the enemy off guard. However, Fang Yuan's divination tortoiseshell was completely undamaged. After the attack, Xia Fei Kuai inspected the result. His eyes widened. Not to mention a deep hole. The divination tortoiseshell was completely undamaged. There was not even a dent. Of course it was like that. Xia Fei Kuai's move used Light Path to imitate Strength Path. It was a unique move. And Fang Yuan's divination tortoise transformation was a rank 7 immortal killer move. It used Change Form, Immortal Goo, and Divination Tortoiseshell Immortal Goo as the cores. Especially the latter, Fang Yuan could activate it to create a shell that was not weaker than the ancient Desolate Beast Divination Tortoiseshell. Now that it was an immortal killer move, with so many supplementary goo worms, the defense of the tortoiseshell was not weaker than a true ancient Desolate Beast Divination Tortoise. Ancient Desolate Beasts had thick skin and strong vitality, and among all species, tortoises were one of the toughest life forms. It was not strange that Xia Fei Kuai's Sky Essence attack had no effect. But to the person involved, it was a bit exaggerated. Sky Essence attack has no effect, such a tough shell? Xia Zhuimo was shocked. Xia Fei Kuai immediately stopped. He felt an emotion that he had not felt for a long time, and that was a headache. Looking at such a thick shell, he felt a headache. He could not attack. Actually, he could have attacked other parts of Fang Yuan's body, but he chose the toughest tortoise shell. Of course, this was also because he wanted to test the depth of Fang Yuan's strength. What should I do? Xia Fei quickly thought. Although he was impatient, he was able to calm down during the sparring. But at this time, Fang Yuan used a second immortal killer move. The aura of all sorts of goo worms spread out. There were immortal goo and mortal goo. Fang Yuan opened his mouth and spat out countless small turtle shells. The small turtle shell was very similar to the back of the divination turtle. If the divination tortoise's head, tail, and limbs were removed, and the tortoise was shrunk countless times, it would look like a small tortoise shell. A large number of small turtle shells floated in the air, spinning at high speed. What is this thing? Xia Fei quickly stopped thinking. Just to be cautious, he flew backward, putting some distance between him and Fang Yuan. Boom! He brandished his fist and punched out. It was still the first strike of the sky element. But this time, the heavy light ball the size of a wine jar didn't touch the divination tortoise. Those fist-sized turtle shells were like flies that had smelled blood, or like a swarm of bees. With a flurry of buzzing sounds, they aimed at Fang Yuan and directly surrounded him. Bam, bam, bam. The small turtle shells seemed to be very hard. In the collision, hundreds of them were destroyed. But Fang Yuan's attack was also expended. It turned into fragments of light and dissipated in the air. Immortal killer move, Vajra Shell. This was an immortal killer move that Fang Yuan modified from his previous one. He combined it with his own divination tortoise transformation, making its first appearance in southern border or even in the 5 regions. The core of this immortal killer move was rank 6 Immortal Goo Vajra Thought. However, rank 7 Perseverance Immortal Goo and a large number of supplementary mortal goo were added. Its power naturally rose by a lot. Fang Yuan's effort were not wasted. This looks like a turtle shell, but it is actually a thought. Xia Zhuimo's eyes shined with a strange light as he exposed the secret. He was a wisdom path goo immortal. He was very sensitive to all kinds of thoughts. This was what he excelled in. As for Xia Fei Kuai, he cultivated light path and not wisdom path. Even though he had rank 7 cultivation level, he only realized it after Xia Zhuimo's reminder. Immortal Xia Zhuimo is very knowledgeable. You are very cooperative. The divination tortoise spoke in human language. Its tone was filled with sarcasm. Actually, Fang Yuan did not want to hide it. It was just that after combining with the divination tortoise transformation, those golden thoughts turned into small black turtle shells. Little Mo, keep quiet. I will definitely break his turtle shell in this battle. Xia Fei Kuai spoke. Xia Zhuimo grunted, not saying anything else. Being mocked by Fang Yuan, his expression turned ugly. Xia Fei Kuai closed his eyes. He started to gather. The aura of all kinds of goo worms continued to rise, rising one after another and quickly spreading out. Red date immortal essence was expended rapidly. At the same time, he stretched out his arms, slowly raising them before putting his palms together above his head. The light on his body flowed like flowing water, converging into the center of his palms. It was still gathering. The light was restrained, but the intense aura continued to expand, becoming more and more dangerous. Fang Yuan lowered his tortoise head. His limbs were firmly planted on the ground. He was like a silent black mountain. But at the same time, all kinds of small turtle shells flew out from his body, increasing rapidly in number. There were close to 10,000 at first, but soon, it broke through 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. The growth was extremely rapid. Rank 6 Vajra Thought Immortal Goo could produce tens of thousands of Vajra Thoughts when activated alone. Now that it was an immortal killer move, the effect was even greater. And most importantly, the Wisdom Path Dao marks on Fang Yuan's body. Actually, Fang Yuan did not have many Wisdom Path Dao marks, but he had Transformation Path Dao marks. He had a lot of Transformation Path Dao marks. Because he had killed many Transformation Path Gu Immortals, he had accumulated all of their Dao marks. The most important gain was killing 3 Gu Immortals in the regional wall, including Wu Yihai. Just from the battle alone, Fang Yuan obtained close to 50,000 Transformation Path Dao marks. 1,000 Dao marks was twice the amplification. 10,000 Dao marks was 10 times the amplification. 50,000 Dao marks was 50 times the amplification. What did that mean? Ordinary rank 7 Gu Immortals only had 10 to 30,000 main path Dao marks. Xiafei Kuai was a rank 7 expert. He had more than 30,000 light path Dao marks. But how could he compare to Fang Yuan? Thereupon, Xiafei Kuai and Xiazhuemo, these 2 Gu Immortals, stared dumbfoundedly as a large number of small tortoise shells spread rapidly, soon filling the whole valley and spreading out. The dense black mass resembled a swarm of locusts or ants. Xiafei Kuai had a grim expression. There were so many of these small turtle shells at once. It was a huge psychological pressure on the bystanders. But Xiafei Kuai used the environment of the spar ingeniously. According to the rules of the spar, Fang Yuan could only defend, he could not attack. Thus, Fang Yuan could not control the small turtle shells to attack Xiafei Kuai. Xiafei Kuai calmed his emotions and activated this immortal killer move. Light Path Immortal Killer Move. Saw Wheel Light. His palms that were raised above his head slashed down. A dazzling wheel of light flew out of Xiafei Kuai's palms. The wheel of light expanded with the wind, rapidly expanding to the size of a boat. The wheel of light continued to rotate. Its edges were covered in saw teeth. Good. Xiazhuemo saw this and cheered inwardly. Even though the turtle shell is thick, this move can cut through even the thickest turtle shell. However, at the next moment, swoosh, 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 countless small turtle shells flew up. Crack, 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 crack. Under the suicidal encirclement of countless small turtle shells, the wheel of light only managed to fly for a short distance before it completely shattered. Xiazhuemo, Xiafei Kuai, Fang Yuan praised. Such a powerful killer move. This move is no small matter. It actually destroyed over 6,000 of my thoughts. These words were like a slap to Xiazhuemo and Xiafei Kuai's faces. Xiafei Kuai needed a lot of time to activate this immortal killer move. Normally speaking, the shorter the activation time, the better, because it was very dangerous and could be easily interrupted. Once interrupted, the activation of the killer move would fail and the Gu Immortal would suffer heavy injuries from the backlash. Xiafei Kuai used the rules of the spar to safely activate this immortal killer move. But, while he was activating it, Fang Yuan was also activating the killer move. Xiafei Kuai activated a saw wheel light. Fang Yuan could activate 30 to 40,000 small turtle shell thoughts at the same time. Then, the saw wheel light was surrounded by more than 6,000 little tortoiseshell intents and shattered. Even an idiot could calculate this clearly. The method that Xiafei Kuai had high hopes for actually ended up like this. Chapter 13:18. Damn it! Xiafei Kuai gritted his teeth. He had spent so much effort to activate the saw light wheel, but now, it seemed like a joke. The small tortoise shell-like thoughts were still growing at this moment. 50,000, 60,000. The numbers kept increasing. Not only did they overflow the valley, they were also expanding outwards. There were countless small tortoise shells. Some were floating in the air, some were rotating. And in the middle was the divination tortoise that Feng Yuan had transformed into. Its huge body was like an iron hill. This cannot go on. Xia Fei Kuai's sense of urgency was becoming stronger. The speed of growth is so fast. No wonder Wu Yihai set such a rule. But Lord Xia Fei Kuai has not used his methods yet. The outcome of this battle is not decided yet. Xia Zhuemo thought, looking at Xia Fei Kuai with anticipation. Xia Fei Kuai was already preparing his killer move. Endless auras of goo worms surged out, surging to the extreme. Pride flashed on his face as he looked down at the divination tortoise. No matter how many there are, they are only thoughts, so what? Take this move, 33 heavenly lights. I want to see how many layers of heavenly lights your thoughts can last. Immortal killer move, 33 heavenly lights. One of Xia Fei Kuai's signature methods, famous in southern border. Is it going to appear? Lord Xia Fei Kuai's group attack method. Xia Zhuemo was inwardly excited. This killer move had its own meaning. Once activated, with Xia Fei Kuai as the wick, it would shine with intense light. Under the illumination of the light, anything would suffer light path damage. The intense light flickered 33 times. The range of the light was huge. It was like it was descending from the sky. Thus it was called 33 heavenly lights. The first flash did not do much damage to living things. At most, it could only kill some insects. But the second flash increased the damage by a level. It could destroy plants and flowers. The third flash, birds and beasts died under the heavenly light. The fourth flash, the trees disintegrated, and the rocks crumbled. The fifth flash, the sixth flash, so on and so forth. The intense light's damage would increase until it could threaten desolate beasts, or even ancient desolate beasts. The small tortoise shell-like thoughts were tough, but they could not compare to desolate beasts. They would definitely be destroyed by the 33 heavenly lights. This was an undeniable fact. Xia Fei Kuai used this move, but it was also a coincidence. 33 heavenly lights were not very practical, because once it was activated, one had to stop moving. Once one moved, this killer move would stop. Xia Fei Kuai even had to suffer from the backlash. Of course, there were differences. If the killer move was stopped before the 10th flash, Xia Fei Kuai would suffer light injuries. Between the 10th flash and the 23rd flash, his injuries would be moderate, and after the 23rd flash, he would be heavily injured. If the killer move was forced to stop after 30 times, then the backlash would be even stronger, causing Xia Fei Kuai to be on the verge of death. The stronger the immortal killer move, the greater the backlash if the activation failed. Soon, there was an explosion of light. The first time it flashed, Feng Yuan's tortoiseshell thought did not budge. The second time it flashed, the thoughts were still growing, but there was no impression. After the third flash of intense light, their thoughts began to waver. The fourth time, the individual thoughts collapsed on their own. For the fifth time, the hundreds of thoughts dissipated into nothingness. Xia Zhuemo, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but smile when he saw this scene. This was only the fifth time. The entire immortal killer move had a total of 33 consecutive flashes. However, why do I have a feeling that something is amiss? Xia Zhuemo thought. The sixth flash, over 1,000 thoughts were destroyed. The tortoiseshell thoughts outside were shaking, showing signs of not being able to endure it. The seventh time, I will get rid of you. Xia Fei Kuai sneered in his heart. But at this moment, swoosh, 70 to 80,000 small tortoiseshell thoughts suddenly entered Feng Yuan's body like a tide. To be more precise, it had shrunk into his mind. He had turned into a divination tortoise. This ancient wisdom path desolate beast had a very wide mind. It was extremely easy for it to bear 70 to 80,000 thoughts. What? Xia Fei Kuai was dumbfounded. Xia Zhuemo patted his head, feeling hatred in his heart. I finally know what is wrong. These small tortoiseshell are thoughts in essence. Since they are thoughts, they can be stored in the Gu Immortal's mind. Thereupon, in the whole valley, 70 to 80,000 thoughts disappeared, entering Feng Yuan's mind. Only the giant divination tortoise was left. It was still lying on the ground. In the air, Xia Fei Kuai's immortal killer move was still going on. 7th flash, 8th flash, 9th flash. But without thoughts, what was the point of these intense lights? And the immortal killer move was still in the process of activating. It could not be casually stopped. Thus, Xia Fei Kuai could only continue to activate the killer move. 10th flash, 11th, 12th. The scene was very awkward. After 33 flashes, Xia Fei Kuai expended a large amount of immortal essence, while the divination tortoise that Fang Yuan had turned into was only left with a giant tortoise shell. It was as stable as Mount Tai, unmoving, and the small valley that he had been residing in had turned into a flat land. 33 heavenly lights were indeed powerful. It forcefully turned the surrounding 1,000 li of land into a flat land. The mountains and hills were all gone. This killer move is truly amazing. Fang Yuan did not stint on his praise. Saying so, he stretched out his head, tail, and limbs from the tortoise shell. His limbs and head were not as tough as the tortoise shell. Thus, in the following flashes, Fang Yuan retracted his shell. He was not injured at all. Hearing Fang Yuan praising him again, Xia Fei Kuai felt extremely gloomy. Too shameless. Xia Zhuemo gritted his teeth, looking at the shameless Fang Yuan with hatred, especially when he saw the 100,000 tiny tortoiseshell thoughts crawl out of Fang Yuan's mind and spread, surrounding the divination tortoise. The hatred in his eyes deepened. How can we break this? Xia Clan's 2 Gu immortals were thinking about this problem. 3 moves have passed already, Fang Yuan reminded plainly. Xia Fei Kuai shouted, then take a few more moves. Saying so, he pounced down, turning into a rainbow of light as he surrounded the divination tortoise and attacked. Countless tortoiseshell thoughts encircled and defended. But Xia Fei Kuai displayed the demeanor of an expert. He traversed the thoughts unhindered. Fang Yuan saw that he was truly enraged and attacked fiercely. He retracted his head, tail, and limbs back into his shell. Xia Fei Kuai was filled with hatred. This Wu Yihai was too wretched. He only left his tortoiseshell for him to hit. There was a huge tortoiseshell on the ground and countless tiny tortoiseshells flying in the sky. Xia Fei Kuai's hatred towards the tortoiseshell rose rapidly. After 10 moves, Xia Fei Kuai's efforts were in vain. There were only some light wounds on Fang Yuan's tortoiseshell. You've won this round. Xia Fei Kuai said this, then turned around and left, flying into the clouds. Xia Zhuemo was left groaning. He had to clean up this mess, or at least bring that Zhang Clan Gu master away. 5 years. 5 years later, I will disturb your clan again. Xia Zhuemo also left with some unwillingness. Chapter 1319. After a spar, Xia Clan's Gu immortals lost and retreated. Fang Yuan stopped his transformation and returned to his human form, returning to Frosty Peak. The mortal Gu house on Frosty Peak was also taken away. Only an icy mountain was left, emitting frost energy. Fang Yuan sighed softly. His mental state was like an ancient well without any ripples. These victories were not worth boasting about. The so-called sense of honor had already left him. Speaking of which, this easy victory was also because I had an advantage. Know thyself, know thy enemy, and win 100 battles. The 2 Xia Clan Gu immortals did not know Fang Yuan's strength. They only estimated it. On the contrary, Fang Yuan knew a lot about them. Be it killer moves or personalities, he had a thorough understanding of them with Wu Clan's help. This showed how important information was in Gu immortal battles. Actually, in the spar between Fang Yuan and the 2 Xia Clan Gu immortals, it was like Wu Yubo losing to immortal Yan Huang. This was an advantage in terms of information. Wu Yubo was very strong, but his signature killer move was seen through. He lost the entire battle due to a moment of carelessness. Fang Yuan knew more. He advanced step by step. He made many plans and made the Xia Clan Gu immortals retreat in the end. Immortal killer move Vajra thought is quite effective. But after using it this time, it will not be easy to have such an effect in the future. The 2 Xia Clan Gu immortals returned in defeat. They would definitely learn from their experience and think of ways to counter or even break the immortal killer move Vajra thought. Breaking it was very difficult, but finding a way to counter it was often easier. Wu Yihai's identity is starting to become famous. Only divination, tortoise transformation, and immortal killer move Vajra thought can be used. But the more I use it, the more I will be targeted by others, or even broken. Actually, reverse flow protection seal is the same. After the Battle of Northern Plains, Celestial Court, the 10 great ancient sects, Longevity Heaven, Old Ancestor Shuehu, and others will analyze it. I need to pay attention to it the next time I use it, especially in front of these people. Fang Yuan became vigilant. Wu Yubo's fate was right in front of them. It was not easy to create an immortal killer move, but a powerful immortal killer move could not remain unchanged for a long time. It needed to advance and improve with time. This way, others could counter or even break your killer move. Only then would you be able to face them effectively. Modifying and upgrading immortal killer moves was naturally a difficult matter. Other than sudden inspiration, the true test was the Gu Immortal's attainment level. And the best place to raise my attainment level in this world is definitely dream realms. Fang Yuan's thoughts involuntarily drifted to that giant dream realm again. It was precisely because of the widespread appearance of dream realms that during the 5 regions chaotic war in Fang Yuan's previous life, all sorts of characters appeared one after another. Together, they formed a magnificent era of war and chaos. It is a pity that I am Wu Hai now. I have just joined Wu Clan. If I forcefully request to go to the Super Gu formation, it would be very suspicious. Although this matter has come to an end, I don't know when I will be able to regain the giant dream. I should focus on what is in front of me and let nature take its course. Fang Yuan thought of this as he landed on Frosty Peak. He had yet to properly search this mountain peak that was rich in ice path resources. After chasing away Xia Clan's Gu Immortals, Fang Yuan had a rare opportunity. He would not let it go. On Frosty Peak, cold air pressed down, snow covered the ground. In the depths of the snow, there were large numbers of insects, including many wild Gu worms, as well as many cold-resistant plants and animals. They formed a balanced ecological landscape. Frost jade. Soon, Fang Yuan found something. A large amount of frost jade appeared in his investigative senses. These frost jade were at the bottom of the snow, hidden in the mountain rocks. Frost jade is only a rank 5 Gu material, but there is some frost jade essence inside. It can be considered a rank 6 immortal material. Fang Yuan did not say anything. He started to mine. Rumble. The snow flew, exposing the exposed mountain rocks. Soon, these rocks also flew, exposing the frost jade inside the mountain. These frost jade were mainly white in color, but there were traces of green in the jade. They emitted intense frost energy, but it did not affect Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan took out all the frost jade in this area. He did not let go of the frost jade essence, but he did not extract it. It was still in the center of this huge frost jade. Next, Fang Yuan's footprints covered the whole of Frosty Peak. Huge pieces of frost jade were dug out by him. The smallest frost jade was the size of an elephant, while the largest was the size of a ship. Almost every piece of frost jade had frost jade essence. Some of the larger frost jade essence were even 1,000-year frost jade essence. These were rank 7 Gu materials. These frost jades were not undiscovered. Wu Clan had purposely left them here, not wanting to weaken Frosty Peak's foundation. These frost jades formed the foundation of Frosty Peak. Without them, Frosty Peak would not have such a unique and outstanding resource point. Fang Yuan stored most of the frost jades into his pouch. Not just that, he also collected many wild Gu worms. There was no need to think about wild immortal Gu. Normally speaking, Frosty Peak could only produce a rank 6 wild immortal Gu after hundreds, or even thousands of years. If there were wild immortal Gu, Xia Clan's Gu Immortals would not admit defeat so easily. Most of these Gu worms were Ice Path wild Gu, but there were also some Earth Path and Water Path Gu worms. Among the Ice Path wild Gu, the most common was a type of Frost Wave Gu. These Gu worms moved in groups and would often roam around Frosty Peak for a period of time. Thus, they would create an intense frost wave that spread towards the surrounding mountain ranges of Frosty Peak. This was also the reason for Frosty Peak's name. After plundering, Fang Yuan flew into the air and took a final look at this Frosty Peak. The Frosty Peak, which was originally covered in snow and had a picturesque scenery, had now become a place full of potholes, uneven peaks, and trifling rocks all over the mountains and fields. Not only did it spoil the scenery, But the entire Frosty Peak's assets had been reduced by more than half, and because of the large amount of frost jade, its foundation had also been greatly reduced. If I use pulling mountain immortal goo, I might be able to pull up this mountain and move it to my sovereign blessed land. Unfortunately, this method won't work. My identity on the surface is Wu Hai, a member of Wu clan. This time, I was greedy and embezzled the resources. I have already reached the limit of the righteous path's unwritten rules. I cannot continue. If I really pull up the mountain, not mentioning the possibility of exposing my true identity, Wu clan will definitely not be able to explain it. Fang Yuan sighed to himself. He did not linger here any longer. He flew into the sky like lightning. Soon, his figure vanished into the clouds. Several days later, Fang Yuan returned to Wu clan's headquarters and saw Wu Yong again. This time, it was all thanks to my brother's help. You protected Frosty Peak for the clan, and even deterred those rascals. Wu Yong nodded towards Fang Yuan, showing an expression of praise. Brother is overpraising me. I was just lucky. Fang Yuan said humbly. Elder Wu Fa, have you calculated it yet? My brother's contribution this time is not a simple matter. We need to consider the big picture. Wu Yong turned around and said to another Wu clan Gu Immortal. This Wu clan Gu Immortal had an ordinary appearance, but his authority was not ordinary. He was Wu Yong's trusted aide. He calculated the rewards and punishments of the clan's Gu Immortals. Wu Fa frowned slightly. We have already witnessed Lord Wu Yihai's bravery. After this battle, Lord's name will definitely spread in southern borders Gu Immortal world. But if we want to reward them according to their contributions, firstly, Lord Wu Yihai did not resolve this matter completely. He set a 5-year agreement. Secondly, Frosty Peak has been exploited viciously. Its foundation is greatly damaged. Its value is greatly reduced. Oh? Frosty Peak actually had a problem? Wu Yong was surprised. He turned to look at Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan sighed. I did not expect Xia Clan's 2 Gu Immortals to be such people. Wu Yong raised his brows slightly. Brother, did you personally see Xia Clan's Gu Immortals excavate Frosty Peak? I did not. It was only my guess. Maybe there were other lone cultivator Gu Immortals? Fang Yuan's reply was flawless. Wu Yong nodded. He was silent for a while. In that case, Elder Wu Fa, please make the decision. Elder Wu Fa continued to calculate, before handing a list to Fang Yuan. Chapter 1320. Fang Yuan took a look. There were many Gu materials on the list. Most of them were mortal Gu materials. There were immortal materials, but they were few. Fang Yuan knew that if he handed over the frost jades and jade essences, the rewards would not be this much. Wu Yong and Wu Fa were actually putting on an act. They were not plotting against Fang Yuan, but to give Fang Yuan a way out. Fang Yuan excavated Frosty Peak. Even though it did not cross the bottom line, Wu clan would rather have the original Frosty Peak. But Fang Yuan did not hand it over. He was silent for a while before saying, I wonder if we can exchange these rewards for immortal Gu material, dragon scale soil? Wu Yong was slightly stunned. He looked at Wu Fa. The latter thought about it and nodded. After returning to his residence, Fang Yuan continued to cultivate. This time, he obtained a lot of frost jades and jade essences. Fang Yuan could almost create a miniature Frosty Peak in mini southern border in the sovereign immortal aperture. But this was not the main point. The main point was the dragon scale soil. This special soil was only an ordinary Gu material. It was hard and formed into granules. If a layer of dragon scale soil was on the ground, it would look like layers of dragon scales. Dragon scale soil was the soil of dragon desolate beasts, ancient desolate dragons, and even immemorial desolate dragons. Because it was contaminated with dragon chi, it gradually formed. Fang Yuan had purchased this soil in his early years. The reason was that with this soil, the dragonfish would have more urge to reproduce. Right now, he did not want other rewards. He only wanted this Gu material. It was for the same reason. The sovereign immortal aperture's time has slowed down by many times. This has caused the immortal aperture's resource production to decrease by a lot. Right now, I do not have enough immortal essence and immortal yuan stone. As long as I expand the scale of resource production, this pressure can be alleviated. After Fang Yuan's consideration, he set the first resource point to expand as dragonfish. Desolate beast dragonfish and ordinary dragonfish had always been the main transactions in jewel yellow skies. The dragonfish seemed to be a creation of food path. It could replace a portion of many goo worms and feed them. Not every goo immortal had an immortal goo. However, every superpower would purchase a large number of dragonfish from time to time. This was the largest flow of arowana sales in the jewel yellow skies market. In the following period of time, Feng Yuan mainly focused on the construction of the sea. Right now, the sovereign immortal aperture's mini eastern sea was no longer a shallow pool of water. Because Feng Yuan annexed a large number of water path immortal apertures, mini eastern sea was already filled with waves. Even though it was not deep, it looked like an ocean on the surface. There were almost no islands, and the sea itself was no different. Feng Yuan's plan was to build a dragon-scale sea. Man-made seas. This was not Feng Yuan's creation, nor was it his own. In fact, in Eastern Sea's Goo Immortal world, many Goo Immortals had already created artificial sea areas. Right now, on the ranking board of Eastern Sea's Goo Immortal world, many of the famous sea areas were man-made sea areas. They were constructed step by step. Of course, naturally formed sea areas still occupied most of the positions on the ranking board. Man-made sea areas were not easy to construct. Feng Yuan spent a lot of time and effort to lay down the dragon-scale soil. He then set up a mortal goo formation, using the power of the goo formation to isolate this sea area into a special sea area. Next, he lured the original dragonfish group into the sea area. The dragonfish group entered this sea area. They were much more relaxed than before. Their mating behavior also increased by a lot. However, this was not enough. Next, Feng Yuan began to prepare Immortal Killer Move, Bountiful Year. This Immortal Killer Move came from He Fan's true inheritance. But in fact, it was not created by He Fan. It was created by a Goo Immortal great expert known as Pill Immortal. He was the one who created this Immortal Killer Move. He Fan used other resources to exchange for it. This was a very rare Immortal Killer Move that was used to manage the Immortal Aperture. It did not have any offensive power, but it was very practical. Even He Fan had left a comment in the True Inheritance. He praised this Immortal Killer Move greatly. Goo worms flew into the sky one after another. The mystical aura continued to expand and become denser. The bountiful year that Feng Yuan was activating had already been modified by him. The original bountiful year had Year Goo as the core immortal goo, with tens of thousands of supplementary goo worms. But now, Feng Yuan had obtained a new rank 7 immortal goo, Perseverance. Feng Yuan ingeniously added Perseverance Immortal Goo as the first supplementary goo worm. More than 10 days later, Bountiful Year's preparation was completed. It was activated. The mystical power covered the whole of Dragon Scale Sea area, but the effect could not be seen in such a short period of time. The original Bountiful Year killer move, even He Fan, needed 2 to 3 days to activate. This was already long enough. After I modified it and added Perseverance Immortal Goo, the time became even longer. It took almost half a month. Fortunately, the activation succeeded and I did not suffer any backlash. Feng Yuan continued to ponder and comprehend. My time path attainment level is still very ordinary. I could only barely add Perseverance Immortal Goo in after the modification. This is the main reason for the huge increase in time. The shorter the activation time of an immortal killer move, the simpler the process, the higher the possibility of the killer move's activation, and the safer the Goo Immortal would be. But Feng Yuan's actions had more advantages than disadvantages. With Perseverance Immortal Goo's help, the duration of Bountiful Year would be doubled. The original Bountiful Year could only affect 1 year in the Immortal Aperture. But now, Feng Yuan could only activate it once, but it could affect 2 years. This was also indirectly saving a portion of Red Date Immortal Essence for Feng Yuan. Bountiful Year still has a lot of room for modification. Fusing Perseverance Immortal Goo into it, or even fusing Immortal Level Day Goo into it can raise the effect of Bountiful Year. But with my current attainment level, I have already reached the limit of time path. Forget it. The matter was settled. This Immortal Aperture construction was Feng Yuan's first big move. Right now, in Mini Eastern Sea, the first special sea area, Dragon Scale Sea area, had completely formed. Large numbers of dragonfish lived here, and among the dragonfish groups, one or two desolate beast dragonfish were very conspicuous. Bountiful Year's power not only enveloped the whole of Dragonscale Sea, but also the vast area around this sea area. According to Hei Fan's true inheritance, once Bountiful Year is activated, although it consumes a lot of immortal essence, it can greatly increase the production of all kinds of resources in the immortal aperture for the next year. But the truth was not so. The Bountiful Year killer move that Fang Yuan activated only covered a portion of mini Eastern Sea. On one hand, this was because Fang Yuan had added Perseverance Immortal Goo, which reduced the area of effect of the killer move. On the other hand, the Sovereign Immortal Aperture was too huge. It was no different from a fantasy for Bountiful Year to cover the whole Sovereign Immortal Aperture. From Dragonscale Lake to Dragonscale Sea, this was a huge leap with profound significance. But after this matter, Fang Yuan's Immortal Yuan Stone and Immortal Essence reserves were almost depleted. To be safe, Fang Yuan started to sell all the resources that he did not need. For example, the Frost Jades and Jade Essences that he plundered from Frosty Peak, as well as large numbers of Ice Path Mortal Goo. There were gains and losses. His current focus was on the dragonfish. After selling some of the resources on hand, Fang Yuan used all his strength to search for a portion of his gains and bought a lot of dragonfish from Jewel Yellow Skies. He released these dragonfish into Dragonscale Sea area. It could be said that he was betting heavily on this project. There was no doubt that this was somewhat risky, but if he did not do it well, the efficiency would be even lower. Comparatively speaking, in the current stable environment, Fang Yuan chose to be more aggressive and take bigger steps. But this way, because his immortal essence reserves were too little, Fang Yuan's hands and feet were tied. He could not casually cultivate, comprehend, or practice immortal killer moves. The days were somewhat difficult. Half a month later, the first batch of dragonfish was sold. The situation started to turn for the better. Over a month later, the second batch of dragonfish was sold by Fang Yuan to Wu Clan. To think that brother is so good at managing dragonfish. Even Wu Yong was a little surprised. Wu Clan originally wanted to buy dragonfish, but they bought them from outside. Now they were selling them internally. Other than Wu Clan, there were also Chao Clan and some other super clans that had close relationships with Wu Clan. Fang Yuan's third batch of dragonfish was sold. Using Wu Yihai's identity and the low price, Fang Yuan's dragonfish successfully entered the market of Southern Borders Goo Immortal World. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.